I don't understand what is the point of calling reality a dream. So what is that? What does that mean? Now what? Yeah, you can have any kind of theories. Anything could be true. That's awesome. But as soon as we're started talking about making claims about reality, that's where it's like it completely shatters into bullshit. I'm struggling to answer the why at this point, because the only why that would be appropriate is essentially you want to become God.
Horrifies me to think that it's so easy to get brainwashed.
Apparently,
Man,
yeah.
There's so many cases, I even myself realized, some of the past information that I digested was actually propaganda. Remember, sometime when during our conversation, I will be saying something and you will feel that's an irrational thing to say. Why would you think it that way? But why do I think it that way? I don't know. But that's how it came to me.
Turn of the Squanch Master, which means we're gonna have to talk about some bullshit today.
Shit. Come on, man.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. It's something I wanted to get into the last episode that we didn't get into.
Yeah.
But essentially, the thesis, the overall theme is, we talked about it before at some point as an idea, almost like a series or maybe a playlist type where we talk about is this bullshit? So it's kind of like that. It's delving into that and taking as an example specifically, some spiritual topics, claims, ideas, etc. And it just so happened I was listening and watching the videos of this guy on YouTube with the actualized.org. Is that his site? Yeah. I don't know if you've seen him or any of his videos before.
I've seen a couple videos, yeah.
Okay, so there you go. He's essentially like a philosopher, right? Or that's how I would classify him at this point. But throughout the years, he just delved into the spirituality much more because that's just, I guess, where it naturally led him. So he started talking about mysticism, and these latest series of videos that he's making is about it's like a deconstructing rationality series. And he issued 3 parts so far, and I watched all of them. They're like almost 4 hours each. So it's like it is a deep dive. Like it is a deep dive, and I like them for what they are, for what they're trying to do. But where I inevitably landed with them is that after each one that I listened to, I would just have a lot more questions for the stuff that just doesn't make sense to me, So you just have a bunch of these statements, which like some of them you can agree with them, some of them are more fuzzy. But at the end of it, I'm trying to understand what it is all for, what is all leading to. And eventually it inevitably clashes into just claims about reality and what reality is. And that's where like I see Looney Tunes. Like I see that either that person is like delusional or like something's going on. But I'm intrigued by this whole phenomenon, as I mentioned to you before, because to be talking confidently for hours and hours and hours on end, about this stuff, making it seem like you know something, but then inevitably saying stuff like, and I think that's the only part that I will play over. The rest of it, I just kind of wanted to go over some of the points and summaries from the videos. It's stuff like, if you knew something like, if you knew the true nature of reality or something like that, you'd be able to walk through walls. It's stuff like that. When do we end on that? That sounds like a claim to me. And anything, when there's a claim, you either demonstrate it or it's not true. Because everything is theoretical. Yeah, you can have any kind of theories. Anything could be true. That's awesome. But as soon as we started talking about making claims about reality, that's where it's like it completely shatters into bullshit, because it doesn't matter what you claim about fire. Fire burns. So if you put your hand into the fire, it will be gone. You will experience pain. That's what reality is. And if you claim anything otherwise, if you're saying anything miraculous, like you can walk through walls, okay, great, just demonstrate it, and there will be no problem. But nope. So, and the funny part is, like, I would go on the videos, I would comment, and I would just ask these like 17 paragraphs, like, okay, this doesn't make sense because of this, explain this, and never, at no point, none of that gets addressed, even though like the guy engages in the comments, but he would be like throwing out such cliches as like, oh, reality is a dream, bro. I'm like, what is this? What is this?
That's just, it's all, that's just your opinion, man. That's
Exactly.
all, it's all that.
If we're just in this land of ideas where it's like, ooh, it could be a freaking dream. But then, even then, I don't understand what's the point of it. I don't understand what is the point of calling reality a dream. So what is that? What does that mean? Now what? You called it a dream.
Humanity has survived tens of thousands, even millions of years, right? But we still haven't figured out what any of this is for or why. I mean, you have smart people all throughout the ages. They've been trying to figure it out, what's going on, what's the fundamental reality. I mean, that's how science came about. It's just these questions that we ask, and then we develop the theories and hypotheses, and then prove them, and then you find out more about the world. That's how it came about. But the fundamental it stems from this question of, okay, why do I see all this stuff? Why do I experience all this stuff, right? I mean, that's the fundamental, especially in the West. That's the fundamental basis of Western civilization, is just the curiosity and drive to find out about the world in itself. And this is the part where I think you can generally formulate this divide between East and West, because in Eastern, I wouldn't say that's completely cover every single aspect of Eastern philosophy, but the gist of the Eastern thought is that you already accept a premise that you are part of the world and you are under the, I just say, the rule is already set, right? For example, in the, I suppose, the subconscious of people from China, for example, from what they learned from the past about the Chinese history and all this and all that kind of wisdom from the past ancestors, what they kind of generally give you the sense that you accept the fact that there is God, essentially, right? That's the premise. Like the idea that your fate is subsumed under heaven. That's what they use, they call it heaven. So that's the presupposition, is that you are not higher than God. You are essentially the idea that you created by God, and this idea that you're divine, and this kind of thing, that you just live in this world. Okay. And so people, they subsume certain facts about the world, like things like fate and all this stuff. So the Chinese, for example, are not very interested in say, oh, why does it feel this way, or why does it look this way? They just accept the fact, the whole I Ching thing, right? It's just to read the pattern of the world, to kind of formulate, okay, I see, this is the world, and you go with the flow of the world, meaning you don't question why the world is the way they are, in a way, right? So compared to the Western world, where it's like, well, why is it this way? Why is it that way, right? Like, that's their fundamental curiosity. They don't care about, you can tell me that, oh yeah, there's a God. Sure, we can believe in a God, but they're still interested in finding out why God make it this way. Or, when I say God, I mean the divine, not just the Christian kind of God, but like the idea that, so East and West both accept some kind of divinity, right? Some sort of divine presence. But different religions have their own interpretation. But this is the idea. So the basis of Western civilization is just that. They were essentially, it's how modern science came about. It's because the fact that this is the etho, this is the way that people, the ancient Greeks, they found out about atoms. They have theories about, I mean, they got some of the stuff wrong, but like they first proposed the idea that the atomization of the world, like we are created by these little tiny fundamental parts. Like that was the theory. They couldn't prove it, but they think that perhaps this is how it is, right? So and within the Western world, like how basically math and all these higher level abstract thinking stuff is all from the West. The Chinese in the East, they didn't do any of that. They do some basic algebra. They found out about basic algebra, and that's it. Because the Chinese are much more utilitarian. Like they don't care about the abstract stuff. They're just like, I need enough math to calculate how much grain I need to
just to deal with the direct reality.
Exactly. So they're more like that. So but the thing is, all the world that we have created in the modern world is based on Western philosophy, Western way of life, Western way of thinking. That's how technology comes about, because you create stuff. You're saying, I want to disrupt the current reality. That's how technology come about, is that you disrupt the status quo, you find some new stuff, and that new stuff define the new paradigm, right? So that's how technology got developed. And with the scientific method, then there's this whole thing. We kind of built this base of knowledge and practical information
but
and
isn't
data.
That's still exploring reality?
Right.
You found out all these parameters and qualities of reality, and you're now using your intelligence. Okay, now I can do this with this stuff. And then you have computers.
Right, exactly. But it's saying you have a hypothesis and then you prove it, right? You're like, so you don't make claims like, oh, this is how it is. It's like, well,
so like obviously this is real. So maybe like to draw an analogy, it's like a guy 500 years ago would say like, oh, if only you knew how to put the atoms together in this configuration, you'd have these screens that would glow light at you, and you'd be able to play virtual games on them, right? So at some point, even that sounded like magic.
Yeah,
I'll grant you that. So like any kind of advanced technology sounds fantastical to the time before it, but still, I mean, if you found out, okay, let's see, if you found out that theoretically, for whatever, like say you're a genius and you did find out, it's like, ooh, like if only people do find out that like the reality is a dream, they'd be able to walk through walls. But there's what is there to do with that information? It's like saying if only I knew how to shit gold bricks, I'd be a rich person. Yeah. But then what to do with this information? Like, is either there's a practical, direct aspect of it, how we interact with reality and see a result, which you promise, or there's nothing. Like, this is where I get stumped because essentially, through talking to this guy in his comments, in order for you to understand all of this properly, you need to essentially dedicate all your priorities to studying this for the foreseeable future years, because it is that complex. But to me, that sounds like BS, because for what?
Because how I understand everything is that the premise is nobody has the answer, right? I mean, it's apparent. The fact that,
but this is the claim,
human,
essentially. If you study and meditate on this, long enough, you'll have the answer. Are you willing to study this and try to figure it out for like next 20 years?
If only it's that easy, man. If it's only is that easy. But there's also...
But that's the only way to check, essentially.
But you see, exactly. If you haven't experienced something, you wouldn't know, right? So the catch-22 here is that without you engaging in that path, you wouldn't know it. Right. So it's still a leap of faith, essentially. So anything you want to believe, any path you want to follow,
it's at least a curiosity, right? So for example, if you studied physics right now, if your goal was to learn everything there's to learn from actual, some people know quantum mechanics right now. But from what I understand, even intelligence aside, for you to grasp quantum mechanics, for anybody to do it, it will take many, many years. Or because of that's how complex it is to truly understand all the components of it, of what's happening where. It's not a matter of just reading a couple of books. You need to understand it, and that is the most difficult part. So first you'll have to study regular physics, which is, there's already so much of it, and only then, because I heard it from real scientists that they were describing, like physicists and stuff. Yeah, this is how long it's going to take because it's that complex. So I don't know. I can't imagine studying something for this much, for this long, essentially without any payoff.
Yeah.
Because you have to be driven enough to and also you do have to believe that it will give you something. And I don't know. It's so far, at this point, I don't know what I believe or what I know about reality. But it's kind of, it's scary to admit either way how much you know or don't know, because it's just, I don't feel solid ground on my feet at this point. But even the prospect of studying the reality, and its laws for your whole life, I'm struggling to answer the why at this point, because the only why that would be appropriate is essentially you want to become God. You want to figure out how he did it, so you can have your own version
Which is what we're
it.
doing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
with the whole AI craze, that's basically that. It's
like a magic wand. If you wave it and have a prompt,
it's like
you might
this
create a thing.
As far as AI is concerned, the whole premise, the whole impetus was just like the what if, right? What if we can create one that, I mean, obviously there are a lot of actual practical uses. Let's just say if you do complete AGI, you can study how the brain works. That's any of the scientific discoveries kind of like that, where you have a question and you try to kind of form a
Yeah, but at the kind of end of this trend line is that the fact that we are trying to create an intelligence is as equals as ours or superior, to help us understand stuff, to help us
to
crack
understand
all kinds of issues, problems, anything that we send our mind to.
How does the mind work,
But
right?
I mean, human nature is we're just we don't want to stop. We always want to have more, have everything. Because where would it stop? Like, if you did have a legitimate genie type of technology where anything could be, anything you say,
I don't think it will happen, man, because
I
it's
don't think it
like,
can.
yeah, because I
Because
think
it's paradoxical in even
the
its
fact
nature,
that,
right?
the fact that I'm not gonna call it human greed, I guess, but also just when you're being alive, it's like you're not static, right? You're
Right.
constantly forming new ideas about what you want, what
You
this
change your
desire.
mind all the
So it's
time. Your
desire.
desires
So
change.
it is
Yeah.
desire. Doesn't matter how you cut it. It is desire.
Yeah.
And
And they never end.
basically it never ends, right? As long as you're alive, you want something. You want this and that. You want to feel this way. You want satisfy some urges. You have some ideas you want to kind of complete, right? It's I mean, some people create projects and so big that it is an accomplishment, but the idea is more like just because we can, because it's
Right.
almost like there is no
Yeah.
other rationale or reason why you would do certain things.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember there was a guy who dig through a mountain. He created a tunnel for like
Yeah. I
30,
remember that.
40 years. And that
You
was
just
the
couldn't
whole
stop.
just start digging. I mean, I don't know. You asked him, it's like, why? Like, I don't think he can
Needs to
even
be
give you an
done.
answer. Right? So
Yeah.
sometimes humans are like that. It's like, yep, I'm just so that we can do it. I mean,
Yeah. I remember, I think about this guy sometimes because I'm like,
That's what you're doing, right?
I was like, what?
Every day you're just digging
It's
some kind of.
it's kind of like, it's almost like, you're given a time in life, and it's completely up to you for how to use it, and you could do anything. Examples like this makes me think about that. It's almost like there is no right or wrong choice in that regard, because who's going to tell you, And if you truly decided that there's nobody, and nothing that can tell you that this is invalid, unless it cuts into other people's well-being. I think that's where it's arguable, of course. But if you're not hurting anybody, but then even that, how do you know when you're hurting who with what? Maybe that guy, undermined the integrity of the whole mountain that will collapse in future and will do some damage or something. You never even know what effect, your actions.
You never know. Things like that have always happened in the world, right? It's like, because that's the scary part about reality, is that things are happening without without your consent, without any of your input.
Yeah.
And it does affect you. Somebody might be doing something and that affects you, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, what are you gonna do? People are gonna do what they do, right? I mean, it's like that's just kind of how the nature of our human reality is. It's just you got to deal with all this uh feelings, all this kind of even formulation in your head about what's more important for you, and this, that, all the philosophies and all the, it's just a way for your mind to comprehend, to make it make sense, right? Because reality doesn't make sense. It's so many things that doesn't. I mean, this is why we're trying to find a way to make it into, So this is the thing. The more you think about it, the more you know that you don't know.
The more absurd everything seems, because you can't find any kind of final answer. But let me ask you, what is this making sense mean to you? Like, what is sense? Like, why does reality have to make sense? Is it just like a certain structure? Is it just an understanding
just the way
of the world's relation to you? I think that's somewhere in that vicinity, right?
I think it's part of the way the mind operates. Like, it cannot operate without somehow finding a structure.
Without sense, it will be just a bunch of randomness, right? It will be just chaos, with just like noise. Nothing
so
is
even
related
if
to anything.
Because you can't live in a lie. You can believe anything you want, but as long as it's kind of self-contained and sort of have its own logic, have its own kind of structures and things, then you can live in a lie
some kind of sense
and believe in that, right? In a lie. So that's the thing. The brain almost has to make everything make sense, because if it doesn't mean, when it makes sense, it doesn't mean it's correct. It doesn't mean that it's completely accurate or true. It can be a false.
It's processed, like it's being perceived by you in some way and integrated into some kind of world.
This is why
world picture.
When you have cognitive dissonance, you go mad, because you can't compute why this two things does not equate. So you can't have that. You had to find some way to make it make sense, right? So I don't know why that is, but the brain, apparently it has its own logic to understand. I see this is how it is. This is how I experience everything, and it makes sense.
So from that standpoint, it makes sense that human mind, it seems to be a specific configuration or a specific filter that filters out the reality into what can be perceived as in almost like a story, right? As a form of narrative, which you can retell, which you can, like, okay, I'm seeing this, this, and this. It's a cat on top of a table, and and everything is kind of labeled and is identifiable and recognizable, and you understand everything's function, and that's what we call human world.
Yeah, and then you play around with it too. Like, for example, if you're a creative person, an artist, you play with the sets. It's like Legos, right? You play around with it, right? This is the given. So scientists are trying to find out, why things are
different
can work the way
combos and what
you just do
interacts with
different combo.
what.
It's just like whether that's just try to find out the physical reality or you play around with arrangements, right? Look, being a musician is just playing thing that makes vibrations, right, in the right sequence. That's pleasurable to us, and that's all you're doing.
Yeah.
So if you just try to see scientifically what you're doing, everything can be explained in this sense. But the human world, you experience it differently. Why would you go to a concert? It's just a whole bunch of noise. Why would you go to a place where a whole bunch of people stand there in front of a couple
Yeah.
guys making noises, right? I mean, but that's the human world. Your experience will be different, and you are creating these experiences, and we want these experiences, right? Because then it's like, why make movies? But that's an experience, right? I mean, that is very human because otherwise, all this stuff is not necessary.
Yeah.
Why do we need to make any of this stuff,
Yeah.
right?
It probably just it won't make sense to anybody else either, right? So it's only humans make movies and watch movies and
As far as
really
we know,
want
right?
movies apparently.
So who knows what some kind of alien life will, how their culture and everything will be. But as far as we having this consciousness and intelligence, this is what we find out. We start seeing, oh, our parents teach us about the world, teachers, in school teach us about the world, and then we learn ourselves, and then oh, okay, so this is how it plays. And then you try to fit in, right? You try to, okay, I guess I'll play this part. But that's all knowledge distilled into you as
Yeah,
you live,
being
right?
passed on through generations as like this is what we learned. This is the norm now. We now have this many planets. This is the latest. This
Yeah.
is what we found out about
So,
our little
I mean, you
Milky
can,
Way.
like a person, you know how there are cases of they found some wild people that
Hmm.
has no educate, they haven't gone through any of our modern, say, education, this and that, right? And they're like feral children, for example, right? Like they weren't taught a language, so
Mm.
they can't even speak. So, but so that's can be the reality
Yeah,
of a living being without any of this knowledge, any of this information. That's how you will be
yeah. They,
living
they
as
they
humans.
perceive a world differently, like as an animal, in much
Yeah,
simpler terms, but
we
with
could live
simpler.
like that.
Yeah, we
We
could.
could we could basically without any of these
We used
institutions,
to
all
at some
these
point.
we used to, right? We will have no language, or at least we can communicate, but make by making
Yeah,
noises, I
very
guess.
very
But
functional,
you
limited.
wouldn't have language, and you would live just like animal out there hunting for food, and that was it.
Yeah,
You know, so nature doesn't care. It doesn't give you any instructions like, oh, you should do this way, that way. You just find out, right? But these things accumulate. We have enough intelligence and we start seeing patterns, we start doing different things, and we found out about fire, right? You found out about, oh, these things can be manipulated. We can use this. And then you need to communicate because you got more people and you got to, making noises that being codified and formulated, and we have different languages now. So it's all that being built up. Um,
hmm
so there's always something before us, right? There's always something that came
yeah. It's
before.
built
Each
on top.
generation is being built on top of that, and then this is how you have this system. Why do you go to school? Why do you have to do this, do that? Kids are obviously when they're growing, they're like very curious. Oh, why is it this way? Why is that? Well, every kids ask that question. Every adult used to ask that question because when you first came to the world, you know nothing. You don't know anything. You're just trying to like see what's going on, right? That's been repeated again and again and again. That's why you have to have a base of knowledge. Otherwise, dude, it's just Groundhog Day every single day, right?
Yeah.
Without knowing what's
Yeah, but this is where, so this is what I want to talk about, like the knowledge part, because now you have knowledge, but then I'm not sure if it's always been like that, but maybe it's because of my own interest, but I see that there's a lot of interest in spirituality these days, from all kinds of folks. It's just people are doing all kinds of other stuff except for religion. There are people who are into witchcraft and stuff, and they're just like legitimately, interested in this stuff. So I see a lot of interest in that. Um, but that may be the symptom of kind of killing God, as Nietzsche was, describing, and this might be an effect of that. This might, because there's a vacuum, or space to fill, and people are trying to fill it with some kind of additional systems or concepts, which will it's almost like a need for an external source of meaning.
Yeah.
Because when there's God, okay, God created us, so we gotta, whatever religion says, like you gotta thank God just for existing or something like that, right? Now you have a whole structure. There's a relationship, right? You assume a specific role. You know at least now what you're doing. You at least have a story to tell. But if you take that away, yeah, what's going on?
Because you
What is
see,
left?
there's always an impetus, like, because you can say, if God is enough, why do we need to find other ways? Because if that's the
Right.
truth, we could just literally just believe in Jesus. That's it. There's nothing else you need to do, right? But why do we create different religions or different things or a different way of thinking? That's because
Yeah.
people find it not enough. Like, you can't, because there are things you can't explain by saying, "Oh, God made it this way." Right? There's so many cases of life as people experience this, like, this doesn't make sense. This is how some people fall out of favor, or fall out of religion, right? They stop believing because it's like,
That doesn't make sense to you. That doesn't make it that it's somehow wrong. It
right.
just makes you
So
don't understand.
exactly. So that's, you can say this either way. This can be said by religious people, uh, referring to these people who don't believe they're God. There's like, well, you just don't understand it. You don't know it. You don't, they could explain it that way, and they could be right. They will be right. And then if you are the atheist, for example, you can explain it your way, and like, well, that also makes sense, right? So, because nobody can prove or disprove it either way. So you're just basically arguing for nothing, essentially, because nobody can tell you. I mean, it's just a matter of belief.
Yeah,
Can
it's
you
just a matter
believe
of
this or
belief,
no?
a matter of opinion and perspective. Yeah, so let me go over some of the just kind of summary points from those videos, just because I think there will be good discussion points, and I want to see and hear what you think about that. See if you can detect anything that we can kind of dive into, because for the most part, a lot of it I agree with, and it makes sense to me. Like, it's all like fairly uh easy to defend, because that's the reason he took the time in those videos to explain it, because he gives a lot of examples to kind of lead you through the through the thinking process, and to demonstrate why this point of view is kind of correct. So for the most part, I even agree with him. It's just I get lost at
Some
the end.
claims,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And this is only part 3. I think there will be more. There will be further parts. So I'm still curious. I'm gonna see where it will go, because I'm interested in seeing if I can learn anything new. Maybe I'll understand something more. But just to go over some of the most salient points from the 3 parts that's been released so far. So this is just a summary. This is not an interpretation or anything. This is literally based on just the transcript of the videos, right? So this is taken as close as possible to how it's been presented. But the series about deconstructing rationality, and it's kind of tries to prove that rational way of thinking is incomplete and inaccurate in terms of perceiving the full reality, and perceiving and understanding full reality. And I didn't even kind of, again, it goes back to definitions, but when you think about the word rationality and what do you consider rational, it was pretty difficult for me to like even define what that is. So before we go into some formal definitions, what does rationality mean to you? Like, what does it mean? Because we can even use it in everyday language, right? Oh, you're being irrational, or you're being, that's a rational decision. What does that mean to be rational or irrational?
Yeah, obviously there's the official definition, but the idea, um, hmm, so rational. How much relationship does that have with logic, right? Because is kind of paired up with the idea of logic, right? It has to make logical sense. So it's a sequence of rational decision, right? So meaning that it makes
you can't use the
sense
same word.
when you, right? No, but I'm trying to figure out, okay, how would you describe something?
How difficult it is to just define this, but you know what rational means, right?
Yeah.
But what is it? What does it mean?
I mean, I think it's very closely related, or at least connected to the idea of logic, right? So it has to make, essentially the gist of it is it has to make sense in a way, right? But that doesn't mean
Makes
it's completely
sense.
correct, but it has the structure of like, okay, so if this happened, then this happened, and then this happened. So that's rational, right? This is what you would expect something to happen, right? As opposed to irrational, which is no rhyme or reason, right? No connection, random.
Yeah, then this, the key terms seem to be there, the sense making, and also based on reality. So it's kind of like some kind of relationships, detection of relationships based in reality. It's a real, it's like a relationship to reality, I would say.
Like based on your codex of understanding about reality.
Because like when you're being rational, you are relating to reality in a correct, valid way. If you're being irrational, you're being chaotic. You're doing nonsense. You're saying nonsense. It's things that others can't understand. So you can still say words, you behave, but if you come up to a stranger on the street and just like wink at them all of a sudden, that's irrational, because that, like, they will not know what that means, right? That doesn't make sense. Like, why does a stranger come up to you and winks at you like that? What does that mean? Your mind will go all over the place, right?
Right, for human interaction, that's definitely out of the norm. You will call these people having
would you say that's irrational?
Or crazy, or, well, they must have their reasons why they're doing it, which is crazy, right? But does that apply? Is that a rational thing to do, or is it?
Yeah, because we constantly say, like in a conversation, you can call somebody irrational. Oh, you're being irrational. When you're being irrational, it means that you are, you may have your own reasons, but as I said, like, they're not making sense to others. That's when you're being irrational.
Right. So it has to be.
There are different subtexts to it, because you can be, you can be a boss in a company, and you say, well, everybody gets a cut to their salary this month. And people will say, well, you're being irrational, because, like, why would you do that, right? Nobody wants to have a cut, So even that term itself is kind of like, there's a lot of subjective
in this case,
weight in it.
They will ask questions like, well, why are you cutting? Why are you cutting our pay?
Is there a reason? Say, like, no, I just want to do it that way. Right. I decided to do that. That's it. No discussion.
No rhyme or reason.
Is that irrational? Right? Or I'm gonna tell you, Ben, I don't want to talk to you anymore. That's it. I'm done. Goodbye. Is that irrational or not? No rhyme or reason. I'm done. I'm tired of talking to you. Okay, goodbye, forever. Is that irrational?
I think when we apply the word rational or irrational, there has to be because that's just a decision. You can just make a decision.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that is irrational. But
still, there is such a thing. There's irrational behavior, correct?
Yeah.
So what is irrational behavior? Is the type that you can't understand, right?
There's definitely something about the common core, according to the common conception, right? That has to be the background by which you compare something is irrational.
Yeah. So it has to do with some kind of normality.
Normality, right? We accept that this is the rational thing to do. Most people will do it this way, but then you did it differently. So we will call that irrational without reason.
Yeah. That actually was essentially my struggle with understanding this term, because as soon as I started thinking about it, I started struggling with the same things you were just encountering right now. So I was just looking it up, and apparently that's part of the problem, because there is the plain language sense of the word, and then there's the philosophical sense of the word. Right. So it's like another case of the word having completely different meanings in different contexts.
Yeah.
So in everyday use, rationality means using clear thought and good judgment rather than impulse or wishful thinking. A rational belief is one that is supported by evidence, and the rational action is one that has a sensible reason behind it. So see, but these are like these are human defined things.
Yeah. How
Sensible
would you define?
Is subjective.
Yeah, it's how would you know this is irrational? Because maybe in that person's head it makes sense, right?
That's what
but
I'm
then
saying. Like it's
but you
subjective term.
remember sometime when during our conversation, I will be saying something and you will feel that's
Oh, yeah.
irrational thing to say.
Yeah,
Why
yeah,
would
yeah.
you think it that way? But why do I think it that way? I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's how it came to
Yeah,
me.
and reflecting on those cases, like I reflected on those a lot, and for sure, I later found out that I was simply like not understanding you. Like literally, that was the problem,
Right.
and that was the
So
reason I would be frustrated. But that's my problem, you know. Well, it is
well,
kind of shared because you
yeah.
could explain yourself better. But what is that? What does better mean? You explain yourself however you explain yourself. We all
Right.
speak
So
however well we can, right?
yeah, so I guess the base of it is that can it be molded in within a logical kind of structure so that most people will understand what you will be trying to communicate, right?
But yeah,
But everybody have different way to interpret things, which this is kind of the way, you know how all the jokes around, right? Like men and women are so different. How they think is different. And
yeah,
sometimes the jokes is just everyday life. Things happen and the guy will be dumbfounded why the woman will do it that way and vice
yeah.
versa. So it's like everybody have their own way to
That
kind
is,
of,
yeah, and that also is because the difference is in lived experience, right? You would have an
yeah,
actual reference to a lived experience of what it's like, and shave your face. And if you don't have a beard and you never had to do that, you have no idea what it's like. You may imagine it, but there's so many experiences that you can't imagine it. And I would argue that's most experiences. Like you can't imagine what it's like to give birth to a child.
yeah.
It
There's
sounds like insanity, but
there's
there are
no way you
actual
will know. You
people
can't.
who
You
go through
just
that.
can't
They're
know.
called women.
Yeah. They will know
uh,
it and you won't know it. You will never know it, right? There's
yeah,
just no
yeah,
comparison. You can be there.
no.
You can have analogies. You can have
I
the way to
conceptually
explain it.
understand, like, okay, the body
Yeah,
stretches and the baby comes out, but
but
what it feels like, you'll have no idea.
no, you never would have that
Yeah,
experience. So yeah, that's what life is all the time is like that. So every single one of us have experiences that define how we operate in the world. So different level of knowledge, different level of understanding, intuition, and all of that, right? So I don't know. It's life is like a vibe, almost like different people have different vibes, and it's just
yeah,
like they
yeah, yeah.
experience it so differently. So they carry themselves in a
And
very
yeah,
different way than
and
you would,
specifically like to logic. You mentioned logic. I just wanted to define it as well, just because it's like a lot of these things seem to be synonymous, but still, all the words are fairly uh, concrete things. So logic is the study of correct reasoning, especially the rules and principles that determine when an argument or inference is valid. So in plain language, logic is the framework people use to tell whether a conclusion follows properly from its premises. It's very, very important because that conclusion, like that's a totally separate thing. So if the stove is hot, you don't want to touch it because it will burn you. That's a statement that you can evaluate logically if it's correct or not. And there's a whole science, and there's
in
all kinds of
logics, yeah.
stuff that you can study for years about this. Because when you want to get precise and actually determine what's what, there are ways to evaluate these things. Because language is a sort of math, there's a certain math to it. I remember covering a few of those formulas in some random course I took online on logic. It was pretty like pretty tedious, because you had all these equations essentially, right? If A is not true and B is A is B true,
Yeah.
they're all these, but that's rigor. That's what actual evaluations of things looks like. It's looking at things, okay, is this thing, is it equal to this thing? No. Okay. And then you go, if you take things apart, that's what it looks like. And we don't like the good part about it is that like you do want to have that as a skill of this logical and rational thinking, because a lot of our world is based on it, right? And you want to have accurate, correct thoughts and conclusions, because if you make a wrong conclusion, that will, that's an error.
Yeah,
That's a
because
problem.
see, life is too complex, and our brain just kind of just they're just dumbing it down, right? Our brain is receiving all these signals and it's dumbing it down for us to understand. Otherwise, you go crazy because there's a lot of signals coming in. So it made me remember this thing that when there's a professor, I think he wrote a book that's pretty famous about semantics, about language, right? I think he first was just talking about it, just generally like, we say that the sun rises over the horizon, but
Right.
that's a false
That's not
assumption.
what actually
That's not
happened. Yeah.
accurate. That's not the way how the actual physics is, right? You
Yeah.
are just revolving around the sun. You're not, the sun is not rising over anything.
Yeah.
So, but you experience life like that. Every
Yeah.
time you watch a sunrise or sunset, it's like, oh yeah, the language, you see how you use that language construct your entire world in that way.
Hmm.
So, but the thing is, most our everyday life, we live in a way that's
our perspective. Yeah.
right. We don't really question it whether or not it's completely accurate or not, right? That's just kind of the practical kind of everyday life experience. But if you want to drill down about the specifics, then yeah,
Yeah.
there's so much to
Hmm.
nitpick
Yeah.
about how
Actually,
you
that's
describe things. And
that's also an interesting tangent to think about, because things seem one way to you,
right,
but the reality
is
of
not.
it can be different than what it
Yeah.
seems. Like as an example with the sun, or so many other things that you like the whole existence of a mirage. That's why it exists. Like, oh, it looks like there's something there, but nothing is there. So that's part of it, is kind of understanding what is real reality and what is not. But even then, like, what the main concern and the main reason you want to understand what reality is that because it does help with survival and
Navigation.
yeah,
Yeah.
navigation and understanding what you're dealing with and how you can predict what can happen based on your actions, right? So it does tie into rationality and if you're thinking correctly about reality. Because if you're lost in the desert and you are seeing a mirage and you don't know about existence of such things, you will go to a wrong place and you will die because of that. That's the real value of knowledge about the world. It's kind of like it's a survival trope in movies.
Yeah.
Or if you have survival skills, which are specific skills, like about how to, makeshift tools and weapons and stuff, and how to use different even plants, or trees or bark, basic stuff like that. If you do know those things, if you're in a situation where those skills are needed, they will save your life,
Yeah.
like of
100%.
100%. And that's knowledge about how to deal with real objects in the physical world, to gain someone out of them, like to make use of them to your specific situation. But to me, that's the benchmark of all knowledge. If there's a lot of this knowledge, which is what a lot of these claims that I want to go through today, like if all of them are true, but they make no difference to you in any way, then I don't understand the purpose of knowing these things. It's like it's a waste of my mental resources to know about these things.
So that's the
It's
practical
like it's
application
like
of,
reading fiction and like believing that there's Batman. It's I don't understand what's the point of it.
yeah. I mean, there are a lot of useless information out there, man. Like,
Well, that's
in terms
and that's
of
the real danger
usability.
today. Yeah, that's kind of the reason I want to be delving into these things, because I think we all need help with with this, with sifting through, with discernment, with understanding what's real, what's not, what can be trusted, what not can be trusted. And I like the idea of being able to discern it yourself based on your own critical thinking, because if you're going through text, uh, some of the stuff, it does seem like somebody's trying to hypnotize you or something into like believing something. And that's what I know. That's what I noticed. Like,
Because
what
you,
is going on here? What is
because
again, who's this for?
yeah, because look, everybody has an opinion, and everybody when they talk, I mean, okay, maybe in a school setting, sure, you can say that. Well, you're trying to learn a thing that being agreed upon as the knowledge. But even within that, right, the author of whoever kind of created the textbook or whatever, what they all have an opinion about things, right? That's why all the scientists are arguing about why, there are certain things that they still argue about because some people disagree. Some people think it's this way or that way, right? I mean, yeah, you have some really common knowledge that everybody just accepts as truth, but even that can be dangerous because you think you understand it, but you actually that's where you're gonna miss it because you think you know the common understanding of it is, and you oftentimes will create these kind of mental boxes where you just
Mm,
put them away. You don't even think deeply about it,
right,
and
right,
that's
right.
where all these misconceptions and stuff like that could happen, right? So it's almost like you need to treat every single piece of information with a new eyes because you can
Yeah,
always see new angles from it. But we're too lazy about that, right? We just have to create these kind of mental tabs, like, okay, just file that away. I don't
yeah,
want to
yeah,
think
yeah.
about it,
You
right?
simplify it and you like, okay, I don't want to, because anything is infinite like that. When you start looking into things, you can go infinitely down to it, right? It's all a rabbit hole every time you look into. So right now, right, we went over the definitions of rationality and logic, but you can study this stuff in
For
universities for
years.
years, like,
And then
and that it will keep going, right?
yeah, because I remember, dude, I was studying a bio AP, man, like college level during high school of biology. Oh my God, the amount of information that was
Yeah,
just explaining about cell process. That's the
a lot of
process that goes on
systems.
in the
Yeah.
cell. Oh man, like that's when I first realized, oh my God, this is deeper. The rabbit hole goes deep, in
Hmm.
terms of trying to understand exactly what that whole process is, and I can't even hold it in my head that's what the cell is doing every single second. That's the process going on. And that's when I realized, yeah, there are so many branches of knowledge that you can go down on. It's like the passive tree, like you can spec in however which way you want, but like that's a whole, you know, um path that you have to go down. So which means you do not have the capacity to understand every single thing out there, and you can't even hold it in your head. There's just no way, right? You can be an expert in some form of knowledge, but there are other things that you just will not understand, and that's the kind of the limitation. Sometimes I think about it, it's like, yeah, there is a limitation by which I can understand things. Like, it doesn't mean that anybody is dumb, it's just they don't have the capacity to learn all of it and plus all the
Yeah.
other stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's why you specialize. You specialize in a specific kind of knowledge, and you are the guy who people go to for that specific knowledge. So that's what just is bound to happen. Nobody has an encyclopedia in their head, So our life becomes this kind of it is kind of fragmentary because you kind of split yourself off into a specific kind of down a rabbit hole, right? There are many different rabbit holes, and you kind of go down there, and you kind of make a name for yourself, I guess, and you will be known for that. Right? But what are you gonna do as a human being? You don't have all the time in the world to learn all of that, and also then also you have the question, okay, why am I learning this specific knowledge, right? Is it because I'm curious about it? Is it because I believe in it,
Yeah.
in finding more
Because
about it, or is
there's an
it?
infinite amount of this information and knowledge you can find. Like I've stumbled upon this a lot in my life because I was generally curious. That's why I took a bunch of various random courses online later, like out of my own volition, because I was curious about the subject. Like, okay, let's look into this. But all of it becomes so freaking technical and
Yeah,
tedious right away that I'm like,
yeah,
okay, right. So what do I need this for? Like I took that economics course that way because I thought, okay, I'll need to, like, I want to just understand this. This is an important aspect of life, but it becomes so technical. It becomes about equations and understanding of values, and it becomes a certain like lens through which you look at the world, right? It's like a certain slice of reality because economics, when you say economics, it implies so many things, but it's a huge system underneath all of it, right? Same as with logic and anything else. I took a course on song making. It was actually a pretty good course
hmm
online. But again, there's a science to it.
Yeah.
Like there's so many things that you do have to think about if you want to be a professional songwriter,
Yeah.
because obviously throughout the millennia, the art evolved and there are certain techniques and things you need to pay attention to and think through.
Yeah.
Because if you don't think them through, it's going to be not as good as if you did those things through.
Yeah. I think I'm tone deaf, but I'm not sure if I'm exactly that. But I for sure
But
I
in
cannot tell.
songwriting, it's the lyrics.
Right, the lyrics, but I'm just saying in general, like when it comes to music, I'm useless. I can't play anything. I don't have the ear for it. I mean, sure I could train myself for sure, could get better. But you know how this is, right? Some people are just better at it. Their ear just can pick up that tune like right away without even that much training. So it's like that, right? Some people are just I don't know, they're just naturally in tune for that kind of thing,
But
or they
yeah,
study, or they,
it's what you have, and you work with that.
yeah,
If
and it's
you,
amazing how some people they're masters at their craft,
yeah,
and that's
yeah.
just like amazing how they can just pick it up right there, like that fast, right? Like
Yeah,
they
the
can
different
play,
everybody has different faculties that are better for different things.
yeah,
So this way, some
which kind
people
of
are really good at singing, and but they can't do math, stuff like
yeah,
that.
which goes back to kind of the incentive of why
Yeah,
you do certain things.
why would
And by
you be
incentive, I
investing
don't
your
just
time?
mean you get to make money or whatever. It's the incentive being that what is the prime directive in your head
Yeah,
about
what are you
certain thing in your
expecting
life?
out of it, right?
Yeah, like is it because you just love it? You just love this thing? This is the number one thing out of
And
all of things in
that
life?
got to be like the only valid reason at this point that I can think of. Because you have to, but even that, what is that? What does that mean? Do you love this thing? You just literally just enjoyable. Somehow it's pleasant for you to be doing that thing, right? You're in this state
Right.
of flow, I guess, when you do that thing. That's the
Yeah.
closest I can think of
Because
it.
the question is we all have to answer the question for ourselves. Okay, what are we doing with our life? Right? What are we spending our times on? And there has to be a conclusion. There has to be a conclusion you can arrive at. Okay, this is the thing I'm gonna be doing. Right? Now, of course, the real trouble is you have to navigate that directive, whatever you come uh, to, against the currents of life. Like that's where it get complicated because I can see, and there's a lot of people have that kind of like live experience where they chase their passion for many many years, and they bounce from one kind of, let's just say, failed experiment to another, and in their live experience, it didn't work out for them. Right? They chased their passion. It didn't work. It did not work. They'd be spending more than decades, and then they at the end of it they realize, yeah,
Yeah,
passion
you
just
just
that is not enough.
you don't, yeah,
Right?
you don't you may not have what it takes. Your skills are not,
Right. There's so
don't
many
compare to other
factors,
people's.
right? Because you can have an idea about what you want to do.
Yeah.
There's also your skills, your timings, your I don't know, your relationships, your networks, your whatever. Right? That's just whole many
Yeah,
different
your all of your
sectionalities.
capabilities go into it. That's why, like, I'm sure there's been many generations of people who would be inspired and dreamed of being like a rock star. I'm sure many if young people went through that. I think I went through that as well. But it's just the idea of being a rock star that is
Yeah,
amazing,
it's the
because
idea.
you're looking at you're looking at the outside of it, like,
Yeah.
oh, this is a world star, everybody loves them, etc., etc. You don't see the flip side of what it's like being a rock star and everything that's involved in it, which is insane, right? That's why everybody's so fascinated with really famous people and their documentaries about them, and people like really paying attention to them, because like there's some kind of madness in the genius, and there's all the rock stars, they have some kind of problems and issues and stories that make them kind of rock stars as well.
Yeah, so that's the complicated part, and it's like nobody has the answer, right? Like how would you know that you can't do it or you can do it, right? It's just
Yeah, you
like
can
what we
only
talk
try,
about.
right?
Without the experience, you won't know. So you have to kind of believe it to do it. But then, so that means any advice that other people give you it's not tailor-made. So it might apply to you, it might not apply to you. So
yeah. You
that's
do
where
have
it's
to
so
listen more to your gut or whatever that is.
yeah. So going back to what we started to talk about, this idea about these theories about reality and this and that. Yeah, you can take it under advisement if it makes sense for you, but like you can't just like, oh, I totally, I got you. I'll believe this.
Because
Like,
I mean, that was the funny part to me. Like when I read all the comments through those videos as well, like mine was the only one that was trying to like engage with the actual points made in it. Everybody else was like, "Oh, this is
sheeple,
great.
right?
This is amazing." I'm like, "Yeah, but like nobody is. It makes sense to everybody, and they think this is greatness, and I'm just the only one that asks questions about it." Like I was just that alone already. It's like that is suspicious. What is like you all of you watched these 4-hour videos and like understood everything in
But
it. That's
you
what
see,
happened, right?
this is the part I could use the word it could be it horrifies me to think that it's so easy to get brainwashed.
Apparently,
Man,
yeah.
there's so many cases. Even myself realized, oh, some of the past information that I digested was
Yeah.
actually propaganda. I was
Yeah.
actually,
And you
oh,
don't have
but
a way to
I
filter
was
it.
swayed. I was like, oh yeah, I kind of went along with their rationale or the rationale that they presented. And then when you get extra information, other information sources, and then you start comparing. It's like, okay, you know what? Wait, hold on. That
Yeah.
actually doesn't make sense. Actually, this is kind of okay. Now I start thinking about what makes,
Yeah. When you put this and this and this together, and like you're saying, these people are saying this. It's the nature of propaganda is that you're distorting reality, right? If the reality is that just take the bluntest example, like say one group of people is saying like, no, we're living in peace with these people, and the other group of people is like their actual lived experiences, they're being killed. That's the reality. But both parties will be saying stuff against each other, and if the other party is employing propaganda, you don't have a way. You have to get extra rigorous and get like boots on the ground or something, or direct access to media there, and compare stuff to understand what the true picture of reality is. But
which
that's the
is
nature of propaganda, is that if it exists and it's designed on purpose, right? It's so insidious that you don't have a way to discern.
Like currently, the meta has shifted. The game of propaganda has shifted because now people have more ready access to information now. So it's about disinformation and misinformation. So as opposed to just control the information, because now they can't, right? Back in the day, for example, in Romania back in the 80s when that dictator was ousted, they had a big battle before he fled. But there was a battle against the government troops and the people who wanted to essentially create a new country. I mean, not new country, but like a new way of government, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the rebels, I guess, they controlled the TV station. And the battle was fought for that TV station because they knew if you control the source of information, then you can shift the narrative. And that was the battle that was fought.
The winners decide the truth.
Decides the truth, exactly, because they can, if the government truth take over, they can say, "Oh, this is not true," nothing happened, and right. So the whole country will not know what's going on. Only
Back
the
to your
capital, right?
workstations.
Yeah. So, but apparently they did a loss. So the rebel won. They held the TV station, and they were able to proclaim to the world that we started a revolution. We drove him away, and then eventually he got caught and he got executed right away because people hate him so much because he was, Anyway, so the idea that back then information are strictly controlled. And because if you control the media, you control the narrative and you control everything. But now you can't. So now it's about feeding you wrong information, all types, all around. So you can't even make a decision. It's like, oh yeah, this could be right, that could be right. So that now they make you polarized. They want you to fall into one camp and you fight among yourself.
That makes so much sense, man. It's almost like if people really knew what was going on, there would be rebellions right away. I think that's the reality.
But that's how this is the case in China. This is what they're trying to do. They try to clamp down everything. The information, do not allow these information to pass around about the reality, because if when the people know how bad it is, they're going to change the way they
panic.
that, and also, they're going to make decisions because people need to make decisions according to information, right? That's just how it is. But how accurate is that information? This goes back to everything, goes into stock market, go into how you even live your daily life, because you need correct information, because otherwise there are going to be situations where people are going to arbitrage that difference. That's what they do, is the information delay or false information, or the gap between the understandings and all of that. But that's the nature of our lived reality, is that people hold these different volumes of knowledge, and they take advantage of the fact that they do, right? So, I mean, I guess as a everyday person, the best thing you can do is to broaden your perspective, broaden your knowledge
You
and
just gotta
understanding.
you gotta cross-reference and cross-check everything. But
Yeah,
like the challenge these days is that you have to do it with your thoughts as well. Like you have to second guess your decisions, your assumptions. The assumptions is the biggest one. That's like the biggest one where, you have
yeah,
to sit down and like, okay, I need to go grocery shop, and then you just need to question yourself for 20 minutes.
yeah.
But do I though? Am I
Dude,
really hungry? Like, do I
today,
not have a bunch of stuff in my pantry?
well, I have a example. Just today, I went to Costco because I ran out of bottled water, because for
Mhm.
work I need to stock my truck. And as I was going through the checkout, today it wasn't that bad. There wasn't that many people, but still a line up, right? And I see the shorter one had a guy with a big cart. Those cart where it's pretty long. You can buy a whole bunch of stuff. You can stack them up like that. So it's a
Mm.
big cart and a small cart. I just have a smaller car, but they have that big car. But because the line seemed shorter on his end, I
Mm.
went there. But that's just instinct. But you
Oh
know
yeah,
what?
I
If
do
I
watch out
actually
for that.
went to the longer one,
Yeah,
because he had a big ass
yeah,
cart, it took longer. If I
yeah.
actually went to that longer line, because they're all smaller
Yeah.
cars, well, I would have finished a lot sooner. But because
That's a
my
fun math to do. Like I often in the store, I actually do that math. Like I come up to the lines and I see the line, the shorter line with the lot of items. You know what I do? Oftentimes I do pick the shorter line because so many times the fact that there are many people in the chain and everybody is fumbling with their payment process that
yeah,
extends the overall time.
yeah,
So I notice that sometimes like even the bigger cart shorter line, that's still faster. Because if you
yeah,
get a bunch of old ladies in a line who are like fumbling for their change for 15 minutes, it's a long time.
yeah.
So,
So,
you
but
never know.
you never know, exactly. Even in this case, yes, I might have went out if
You
I actually
might,
went
yeah.
to
It's
the
it's
longer
it's an
line. You can
assumption.
end up being faster. But what if something happened there? They fumbled, like you say, right?
Yeah, yeah.
With and then you don't know that. You don't
Yeah.
know which
This
one is
is why, like,
faster.
really, like these days, I don't care.
Yeah,
I see. They said it's one of those cases, like, you know what? Reality is the way it is.
it is. Yeah,
What are you looking to win here? Just relax and enjoy the process.
yeah,
Just stand in line. You're gonna have your turn in a couple of minutes. No problem. Don't
yeah.
sweat about it.
That's the thing, because constantly I
You're
don't know. It's
trying
just
to,
human
yeah,
nature, right? It's like, oh, I want to win in
yeah,
this
yeah,
in
yeah. You're
this
trying to
scenario.
to to
But
calculate.
then how do you win, right?
Yeah,
When you kind of start making it into a zero sum game,
yeah,
then there are parameters you gotta play around with, right?
yeah.
So,
But like the big reason is that I don't want to think about this stuff. Like I really feel like all that mental energy, like I don't want to like what are you gonna gain? Do you think you'll sell yourself into anxiety with this
so
stuff?
again, go back to our saying, curate your experience, right? Because something gotta give. There are certain things you just have to give up. There are certain things that you
Yeah.
pay attention to.
I mean, it's all kind of depends on again as well. Like if that because you can turn everything into a game, right? You could be doing it out of just for fun reasons, like ooh, let's bet on who gets to pass through which line quicker. That could be fun if you do it with
Yeah,
another person, but by yourself, like don't cause yourself anxiety with this stuff because you set yourself up for disappointment that way, right? It's like ooh, I'm gonna stand behind this person because I'll be faster, and then it ends up being slower, and you're like. Damn
yeah,
it. And you become disappointed. But it's
yeah.
all in your
That's
all making, right?
in your head.
You did it yourself.
I mean, think about people who gamble, right? The idea is just probability. You're trying to play around with that and somehow thinking that you're gonna win. It's just, if you think about some of the stuff that kind of, because it could make rational sense in their own head, but the actual reality can be reflected
Well,
very
that's
differently.
that's a whole other mechanism there of gambling. Like there's some kind of hope and excitement and um, what's that word? How is it in English? I don't actually know what it's called in English. In Russian, there's a word for the sense of.
Expect.
Let me translate that. I actually don't know what it means.
Yeah, you see all these pockets of
Dude,
esoteric meanings. Like you're in Russian,
there's
you have a
no.
word for
That's not
this,
like all
but
the translations are not the word. Wow. They don't have the same meaning. So this word translates as passion, vehemence, hazard, demon, gusto, enthusiasm. So obviously it's not any of those things, right? Because there's a bunch of semi-related things. Fire in the belly, zeal, ardor. Not I mean, not really. It's like it's a type of
like a feeding,
mm,
like
it's a disposition. It's like when you're gambling and you're looking to like win a bet, it's that type of feeling. Like you want to play, you want to gamble and you're invested. You are in on it. You're like, "Okay, I'm going to get something out of it." It's like
yeah.
that. It's feeling like that.
So you see,
So,
you guys have a specific word to
specific word.
describe
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that kind of feeling. So you see, it's
Kind of
so
like thrill of the race, something like that. Yeah,
okay,
yeah, close
right,
to
right.
that.
But you see, right? Different language codify different experiences,
Yeah,
right? Some
exactly.
other language doesn't have it. They don't experience it that, or it's very different. Just like there's some language that has like 14 words for snow or
Oh, yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah. Indeed.
It's like how, but yeah, they do, right? So depending on how more definition you want to kind of drill down to.
Yeah. Okay, let's actually try to get into this stuff because we keep going around it.
Are we? Are we going around it?
Yeah, yeah. Because I want to introduce a couple of points from the
Okay.
actual videos because we never went into what it is, right? Into what the claims are. But essentially, the first parts they're talking about a lot about what rationality is and really codifies it, which I find even that is important. But the main thing is that there are distinctions between these words. Like reasonableness is a different type of thing. Reasonableness is defined there like thinking and acting in ways that make sense and are likely to work, but not uh they're not they're more like intuitive judgment, you know. Reasonableness, what a person is reasonable when they're, again, it's a subjective judgment. If you're reasonable, it has to do with more human conventions. It's reasonable to be, generous among friends, stuff like that. It's unreasonable to be selfish, if you're a guest or something like that. So there are conventions, more like conventions. Then there's the rationality that we talked about. In videos, he defined it more like a formal, systemic, and explicit, rigorous methods for thinking. And it's a rule-based sense-making and acting. So rationality. Rationality means that there are certain rules for making sense. I like that. Like that makes sense, that means that you take some kind of a rule, and based on that, you build your meaning. You build your senses and how things relate to each other. So you're not breaking certain rules. That's an important part, I think, because otherwise, it's like anything goes. You can say, I'm the king of the mountain, and then you believe it, and that makes it true for you. That's not rational. And then he distinguishes other things like rationalism. So he makes that distinction because I guess apparently some people are so into rationality that they use it as the top most framework and system um, for considering what is true and what is not true, what's correct, what's incorrect. So he defines it as an ideology that makes exaggerated claims about the power and sufficiency of faith in rationality, as like top way to understand the world, say, right? I even agree with that. So there is definitely limits to everything. There's limits to any kind of framework. Science has limitations, faith has limitations, and this being rational also, of course, will have its limitations, because I'm sure you can find situations where, if you are in a forest faced with a dangerous animal, rationality goes out the window. It's like at that point anything goes. If you need to survive, and the only way out of it is to bite the lion's ear off, that's going to be the thing. Rational or
Well,
not?
in that sense, that would be the rational thing to
Yeah,
do,
yeah.
right?
So but the goalposts of what's considered rational change like that. They
Yeah,
depend on context,
on the
because if you're
context. Yeah.
just in a zoo and you decided to bite a lion's ear off, that will be a different thing. That will be rational. So it's like, it's crazy that it's even that is contextual like that. Then just to cover a few core assumptions of rationalism's ontology, which I'll go over a couple of main points there. So assumption is that objective material world exists and reality exists independently from the self or mind. So that kind of already introduces to you that whether whatever, if this assumption belongs to rationality or not, that's already an interesting thing to think about, because that kind of slowly introduces this idea of that might not be the case, but it underlines specifically that a rational person exists, or believes that the objective world exists on its own.
So wouldn't that be dualism as opposed to non-dual, right? The idea that, like,
No,
dualism
dualism is
in the
more
idea
about
that
the
separation of.
Yeah, I guess dualism has to do there, because dualism is separation about the mind and body, and here is the separation of the world from yourself, essentially. So
Mhm.
slightly different. It's not dualism. Um, there's assumption in it that there are fixed, distinct objects and identities. So things like cats, dogs, men, women, they have crisp, independent definitions. Uh, Even that, yeah, I agree that is, in terms of an aspect of reality, it's not like that. When you start investigating these things, it's very hard to define anything, as we've seen. And I do agree with this statement that the actual reality is not as simple like that. It's because there is not a line that you can define where this is the edge of, because there are all kinds of men and all kinds of women out there. There are people with mixes of characteristics, and they're like, yeah, they look like a man, but they may not be your average man, you know, which means, like, what kind of men are there? Like, what is the man? So, and a lot of things like that. He makes a lot of good examples of that in the video for that, which it's kind of like Buddhism's, I think, idea, right? Because they do that a lot. They investigate when is a chair. So you could deconstruct a thing and try to find when is a thing itself. Like, I'm familiar with that idea. I can even agree to that there is no easy way to really define and categorize many things, even though you kind of do understand what they are, right? When you walk into a room and somebody says, sit on a chair, you don't go through an existential crisis. You kind of understand what it means, right?
I mean, to be real, you should, but
Yeah. Well,
you
yeah,
don't.
yeah, yeah. You should. So yeah. Then objectivity over subjectivity. So subjective experience is unreliable or illusory. Objective is primary. So there's one of the core assumptions of it.
But even say objectivity, that's still kind of a consensus, right? It's like a um consensualized, was that the word? Subjectivity, because it's basically a whole bunch of subjectivity kind of
right.
coming together as like,
Yeah,
hey, we
and
decided that
agreeing.
this is the
Yeah,
objective
it's
view.
only some kind of consensus.
Yeah, so that still cannot be
It can't be
separate
verified. At the
from.
very least, it can't be verified, right? So
Yes. Yeah.
whichever claim about an object in reality is, the only way it can be verified is by a subjective mind who will have a specific perspective. There's no way around it. So in all of this, like this already gives you kind of glimpses into why rationalism, which is kind of like this uh, really belief in the rational capacity of the mind to discern and understand and categorize everything in reality, it is limited there because all of these are obviously problems. There are others, for example, mind or consciousness are illusions derived from physical atoms, neurons. But that's neither here nor there. That's not proven. That's a stance essentially, right? That's as an assumption. Again, these are all assumptions. So rationalism assumes that, oh, it must have come from atoms, right? The consciousness must be generated by this physical matter, and we just need to figure out how it's done. But again, it's just an assumption. It may be some other way. There's also reductionism. So all phenomena reduced to atomic parts, facts, physics, and mechanical laws. That, yeah, you can say that it's an assumption. That nobody has any way to prove it, that that's the case, right? Again, like a lot of this would have to be proven in a way where you do reproduce a way of generating consciousness. Like the moment that happens in the world, like science will be able to say, these are the components of consciousness. And then you put them together and you have consciousness. And somehow you have proof. But nothing like that is, in reality. There's also an assumption that reality is finite and non-unified. So the universe is limited and composed of separate parts. Yeah, it is an assumption because, like, how would we? That's the only way we can think of anything. You take a thing and you examine its observable part. There's, I don't know how you can assume. Like, I don't even understand how that statement makes. Like, you can't evaluate infinity.
Yeah. What's
That's
the
an
reference
abstract
point, right?
concept.
Yeah.
But I
So
guess it points out to the fact that rationalism tries to box reality into something bite-sized, right? It tries to cut the corners and say it's this. But you can see kind of the
would be
rebuttal.
nice.
Yeah,
Would be
but
nice if that's true.
that's to me, like I do see it as if reality was infinite, that would be the only way of the limited mind to cope with it, right? It would try to because by definition you can't put something bigger than a fixed limit or limited space, so it would be impossible to conceptualize it even. And then let's see, denial of higher intelligence, so no intelligence beyond human cognition exists. That's, I guess, like atheism, like no higher power, no divinity exists because there's no evidence for it or something. All of that is part of rationalism. So it's essentially painting as a very specific type of person, like an atheistic scientist type of guy who only believes in the power of rational mind to identify anything in reality and describe it and define it, etc. And then one more, truth as objective and provable, and that's an interesting one. Truth corresponds to verifiable, formal, logical propositions. And I think that's the biggest one I have trouble with, because that's the only way we know what truth is. Because it has to be verifiable, and it has to be as direct as yes, this is what we generally agree as a red cup on the table, right? We have to have logical propositions about it. We have to be able to describe it with a logical statement. if the stove is hot, don't put your hand on it. It has to be as simple as that, because that's how you verified whether the statement is true or not. And because the opposite of that, if that not the case, if truth is not objective and provable, then it's kind of like anything you say is true, which doesn't make sense to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where I get lost, like, because that's what the whole of human civilization is based on.
Wouldn't there be, say, well, there's when we can understand the concept of truth, which is things that are real, but the thing is the problem with it is this verification part of it, right? Because something could be true and you don't know it, right?
Yeah.
Because you haven't
But
seen it or you haven't experienced it, but it
yes,
still is the
but it
reality.
still all
But
goes back to being reality, demonstrable. That's the biggest part.
right. But
So
then
because
if you haven't, this is like this. Okay, so we know, at least from what scientists are saying, right? We have a observable universe, meaning, the speed of light, that's the distance by which we can see things. And then there beyond that, obviously things we can't see, they're unobserved.
Mhm.
But as far as we are concerned, that doesn't exist
Pretty
outside
much.
of the
Yeah, yeah.
observable, right? But that doesn't mean they don't exist. So the truth
Yeah.
can still be
And
out there.
you can fantasize about it, you can make theories, but you have to really, really remember that it's just
It has
ideas
to
at
be
that point.
proof. You
Yeah.
have to be able to experience it somehow,
Yeah.
perceive it, or be able to
That's
measure
why
it.
theory
to-
is just like a nice little story you wrap up
Yeah.
on this thing.
It's nice
But it
if
has
this
to
way.
become, the story becomes reality only when it's observable reality, where you can go into a lab and see, like, okay, if you add this element to this element, you have this one, and we call this one element like this. That's what reality is.
Yeah. And the problem is people are trying to claim that they know some kind of like overarching, like,
Yeah.
reality and truth, and like this is the real this is describe everything. Like, that doesn't exist for humans, man.
Yeah.
I mean, how would, because everything has to be measured, because how else you gonna prove it? For us, as far as we know, there's no other way other than us
Yeah.
experience it
Yeah.
somehow. Like,
And this is the crux of the issue for why I found these videos fascinating and wanted to talk about them. So this was just a couple of intro things. The most interesting ones in the later two parts, but let me get you. So the first part of the insights and conclusions were mostly about rationalism, kind of painting its limitations. So talking about how rationalism essentially is it's a paradigm. It's just one of the paradigms. It is powerful. It has uses, but it's limited, and it's the author, the speaker, claims that essentially it's so embedded in academia and STEM culture that people who use it, they overestimate its power and the power of formal reason and scientific method to capture all truth. So the whole reason for this series is essentially to, like, I guess, expand people's minds and ideas of how to think. The premise is good. I like the premise. The premise is like, oh, maybe there is a better way of thinking that actually allows you to see and understand more of reality, right? So that first part highlights essentially the limits of rationalism, the fact that there's a lot of unexamined assumptions about it, but it starts going into the kind of the mystical, metaphysical territory pretty quickly. Let me see some of the other key insights and conclusions. Reality is better understood as fluid, unified, and nebulous whole, where distinctions and definitions are relative, context-dependent, and mental constructions. Kind of, yeah. We can already see in some of our discussion today, right? Because some of these definitions and what we consider what depends on context.
Hmm.
So I would accept that. Like that still makes sense to me that it's true because you can't argue for it, right? Like even with these words, like in different languages, they point to a different slice of lived experience and emotion or disposition, which is not easily translatable. Which means it's very much mm, it depends on the context and the relations between the components, so to say.
Yeah, because everything is changing at all times. Imagine where you're living. The earth changes, things grow, the weather change,
Hmm.
your house change, you change. I think nothing can be defined exactly in terms of space and time, and
Yeah.
it's all
To
revolving.
equate reality to words is, yeah, it seems to be impossible. If you were to be honest about it, if you really examined, and it's the ship of Theseus all over again, right? It's like which is the version that is the real one. It's that. So it's like I do agree with that. So it talks about how it makes me thinking about the fact that our language is very imprecise, and it's not even it
Yeah.
doesn't even mean what we think it means, as we notice in our attempts to define things, right? Like, because it's very interesting because surely we're able to use words uh, without thinking much about it, but we convey so much meaning through it if you think about it. But it's completely context dependent. It's just we don't stop to think about all of that because it all happens automatically. A lot of this meaning just gets complete decoded and encoded automatically. It's like a skill that we have. It's a feature of the overall intelligence that we have, of how quickly and robustly we're able to create meaning and can consume meaning, code and decode it. But we're doing it at the rates that has never been done before in human history. So maybe this is discussions like this is a symptom of that. Is that like people are genuinely getting confused about
Well,
what's what?
yeah. The currently is just everything is just getting more and
Very
more
confusing.
is discombobulating because it's just too many things going on. And I mean that has always been the case, but the problem is we have a lot more dimensions to it now with in the field of politics,
It's
I
aware of
don't
much
know,
more stuff.
the economy and things and stuff being developed and technology. Like it's just, yeah, exactly. Things are getting way too
So
fast.
many
The information are
interactions,
coming
so
way
many
too fast,
players. Yeah.
right? Because aided by technology, now we have all these access to information. Now we got to distinguish faster and faster, and our rate of, or at least the ability or even the desire to go through the information and try to find the truth of it, the cost is high now because you got way too many information too fast.
Yeah.
There's too
The
you can't
noise to
keep up.
signal ratio is
Exactly.
out of
It's
whack. So it's extra
way too.
taxing on everybody to even understand what should be given priority and importance, right? Among
Yeah.
all of this.
And that's why we're lost. We don't where are we going? Right?
Yeah.
How is things gonna turn out? You don't know because especially when things are happening this fast in terms of adopting new technology, information technology, and all this, like it's just getting way too, like, obviously we see the benefit of that, right? With all this artificial intelligence, it is some aspect of it is very helpful. Some of these searches that you would take just a couple seconds, you can find out about something, and that does
Yeah.
help you.
No, legitimately saves a lot of time for such applications.
Yeah, but what about all the other aspect? We don't know, right?
Yeah, there's
How
always a
far.
cost.
There's always a exactly, because yeah, you get something, but does that mean this is the best thing that, because obviously right now we're just zooming through all of this without even thinking about
Yeah.
any consequences or how this is going to affect. I mean, already start to affect us. There's things where it's too ambiguous in the law, in the whatever, and that's just like we're like, oh, how do we deal with this? We have all these new cases of new situations, and we haven't even made laws again, regulating any of this stuff. So it's like, yeah, this is getting wild, right? You don't know what's next. And so it's so now even okay, so even with that is also there is changing the information that's indexed now. Because some of these AI are either they hallucinate or they change the actual information now that's encoded into these data banks. So meaning that some of these information are getting corrupted, and if we don't find ways to record this, we're gonna be passing down the wrong information now
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you don't have it on record. These are all digital stuff that can
That
be
will become
changed,
reality.
and that will become a reality. So especially historical events and stuff, it will be recorded differently
Yeah.
because now it's like, oh, we think that's what happened, but actually that's
Yeah,
not
no,
true.
that's yeah, now that you're saying like that's such a humongous danger about which people don't even understand that that's on the table. But essentially
Yeah.
you in a couple like in the next generation we could have people who'd be just going to AI and saying like, see, Hitler was
Yeah.
actually a force for good in the world. He
Yeah.
saved
That
us
could
from all
be.
those problems because that's the only narrative that will be in the
Yeah. And you
meta.
know how things pass down. It's very. There was a
Broken
video. It's
phone.
very funny. They have. I think at that specific one was two Chinese person doing this. What do you call that? The Chinese chair or whatever. So they will be. They will be sitting on either end of the line, and you have different people sitting between them, and they all speak different language. So the
Hmm.
Chinese first person will say something
Oh.
you will say something, and then they gonna have to translate that into their own language and then tell the next person. And
Wow.
so eventually it got so muddled, like the meaning
Not
was
the same
lost.
thing,
The
right?
meaning was lost because of how the different people
Oh my God,
interpret
it's
and understand
true.
it.
Because every
it
time you translate it, that you lose
you lose
you lose
some of the
something.
yeah, and some of it people just don't understand it, and they just use a
And
totally
they use
wrong
the nearest
definition
approximation
or
of what they understood.
yeah.
And that
So
shows you how this
how information
understanding is like,
and also
wow.
it goes back to show it goes back to that idea about signs and symbols, like that whole um you know s- uh, scientists and engineers are having this really hard time defining how do we label. I think we mentioned this before, but just quickly I'm going to mention it, the idea that how do we label nuclear waste, because in the far
Hmm.
future, how do you design something in which it's not defined by language and you can understand exactly what it's trying to say, and you can't, because in the far future people gonna find this thing and they think that it's some
Oh,
alien
what is that?
technology
Yeah,
or
yeah.
alien temple or whatever,
What
and
is
they're
it
gonna
pointing
dig it
to?
down. They're gonna actually dig it out because they think this is
Oh,
relic.
yeah, they buried
Because
it.
you can't say, because the nuclear sign, what does that mean? I don't know, right?
Yeah.
If you wouldn't know what it means
It needs to
without describing
be,
in language.
yeah, it needs to be foolproof. It needs to be
And then
like,
so they were trying to figure it out, and they couldn't figure it out because anything you
damn.
design, they could be misinterpreted, right?
Yeah.
Any signs of danger, whatever, if you make a spiky and they think, oh, this
Yeah.
is temple, the temple of the
Yeah.
gods.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's things like that, right? So imagine it's right now it's
Wow.
happening, right?
That's a real
I
problem.
remember somebody was reporting this about books. Some of those classic books, they all AI has already changed it. They start having um achronistic items. Like, that's the
Anachronistic?
word? Yeah, like the item that didn't exist during the description of
Right.
the time period.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They start having iPhones and whatever,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that's just how they use AI to kind of retranslate the books or whatever. But, but it's published. So now the new kids are reading like, oh yeah, they had like iPhones or
And they have
whatever.
no
Like, but
idea to
that's not
verify,
true.
yeah, how
In
things
that
work.
time period is not real. That's didn't exist yet. So you have these kind of altered information. So imagine, look, history is who knows what happened,
But
right?
yeah.
A lot of these things we might know the general line of history. That might just be manipulated for your
Oh,
information.
most of the
You
time,
know,
yeah. By
it's because
winners.
the victor decides what to
What
write.
truth is,
You
yeah.
know, what is true and what's not. So imagine now. Can you? I mean, this is just right now. It's just the AI isn't able to stop hallucinating. But imagine, okay, let's just say it can record and keep the right record. But can you really fully trust it? See, the problem is right now we have a
you don't know what happened to the data. You don't know whether it's been tempered, if it's been evaluated, interpreted, etc.
And I remember I was watching again this there was a video that I did post it to you talking about the this guy was dissecting into the film of Dune, and part of it they put the quote that was written by Frank Herbert back in the day in 1965 when the first book was published, and he was talking about the AI, right? This backstory to Dune was this war against AI and all that, but he was a visionary writer because at the time he was thinking about this. What if we have AI?
Yeah.
And that's 1965. That's even before computer even was becoming, mainstream.
Yeah.
So he was thinking about these questions like, oh, but what if we relinquish our reasoning to AI? And that's the danger. That's what. So the whole story of Dune, at least the backstory, was just that we trusted in that timeline. We trusted AI so much that we let them direct everything.
Yeah.
And we stopped thinking. And that whole disaster was just people gave up their rights to of what they're given, right? Your ability to think. So this kind of really, that's a legendary. I don't know, man. That book is awesome. Like the way how you can even think about these things before it even come about, and is as true as ever right now. Right? We are giving up all our faculty of reason, of using your brain. We're just getting dumb now because we just using AI to find out. We're not using our brain anymore. So eventually, you're gonna be vulnerable to misinformation, to manipulation, and just I don't know. You live in a bubble reality of false information, right? You think you got the truth.
Yeah, that's
how the hell
where
are you
it's
gonna know?
it's easy to get into a conspiracy theory at that point because you could totally see how that could be a globally orchestrated thing.
Yeah.
Like somebody introduced this technology, because I mean, I see these corporate memes all the time too, because essentially all the companies these days, like who have workers and offices, everybody gets pushed to use AI as a company policy. Ooh, that's adoption on such a mass scale that it's mandatory. Like you have to use it. Whoa.
Because imagine
and that
when
changes
you use it,
your whole mind.
The inertia is that you stop thinking because
you get
the AI
used to
can
it
think
for sure.
You,
yeah.
Right? And I mean, that's the part where how many shortcuts are you wanting to make? There will be a point in your life where there is no more shortcut that you can take, because then it will negatively
you
impact your life.
Everything,
Yeah, when you outsource even your own mental capacities and everything.
When you outsource your ability to even to tell what's good for you. Ooh.
Yeah. Right? Because I want to see what everybody else says was good for me. Like, how are they gonna know?
Yeah.
That's the thing. I think one of the things that this is how I kind of shift my way of thinking is that I definitely realize that I think that the ability to think for yourself and to kind of not to be in a selfish way, just like, oh, I'm better than everybody else. But when you start to kind of go from your sort of, when you expand your way of looking at life from your point of view, of your own perspective, and delve down deeper from that point of view, and not overly thinking about what other people think or what other people, because just basically live for yourself, right? That is such a powerful thing to do because I feel like a lot of the times, given where I came from in my culture, I realize that's a problem because everybody is the collective mentality. Like they're under this kind of collective mentality where you just follow the group. Why would you do that? You are relinquishing your own individuality.
Yeah, because the group, you don't know what the group is doing. What is it doing for?
Yeah.
Because somebody may have started doing something and manipulated the group to do it for their own agenda. And now you're like, oh, I'm going to go along and be a sheep.
This is why I see the problem. In Asian countries, I mean, I'm not saying it's 100% bad, but it's just the fact that this is a thing.
For sure,
it factor into how you think, and then you just like, oh, I wonder what other people think. Like, no, just think for yourself.
Because it happens every day.
Because because the thing is, I have to thank you, because in our conversation, it start making me
Makes you
think about,
think.
because this is your default position. And I know some of the kind of argument that we had was
Yeah.
when I think back to it, it's like, oh, because I was coming from a collective mentality, I keep talking about what other people are like.
Yeah.
Why do you care about other people?
Yeah, I
You need to
remember
care
those
about
those those were
yourself.
that
You need
those were
to,
interesting. I'm glad
right?
they made you think. Yeah.
Yeah, because now it's like, you know what? That actually makes sense. Because why are you living for other people? They're
Yeah.
not you. They're not.
Yeah, what do
They
other
don't
people
know
have to
you
do with you? Yeah.
live experience. They don't know you live experience. So I'm not saying this to be a selfish asshole. I'm just saying you got to think for yourself. You got to
Yeah.
start from your position and be like, okay, what makes sense? Does anything that I'm receiving information wise, does
Yeah.
that make sense to
I
me?
think at the very least you have to be conscious about it, because you could be like, you know what? I like my big part of my identity is in my heritage, in my traditions, in my ancestry, and that's actually that's the most beautiful thing. But you have that, like, that has to be wrapped up in a certain, that has to be a shared culture with other people, etc. Like, you're not doing this in isolation on your own. But it's still a different thing, like still remembering that you are still an individual who has
Agencies. I mean,
agency in your own life and your own thought process. I mean, to me, it's a dichotomy, and I do see it a lot in the world, because a lot of society, like people, there's groupthink, like there's group existence, I would say,
yeah, yeah,
because I noticed it, because like I'm just not like that. I feel uncomfortable in groups,
yeah,
because I notice, like, wow, there's people like I see that they're behaving like as one thing, as like one organism, and it makes me uncomfortable.
yeah.
I'm like, this is weird.
It's like
We're not
brainwash.
we're
You're
not
all
one
like
thing.
zombies.
Yeah,
You know.
we're all different people, individuals, and you're behaving like it's too coordinated, and it freaks me out, because I'm like, I don't want to do that. That's weird.
Bro, I don't know, man. That again, that Dune film, it's so good because, dude, the whole time I was in theater, I was watching that end scene in Dune 2
Hmm.
where he was talking in the siege. I would start to believe in the prophecy. Almost like it feels so awe-inspired. Like I realize
Yeah,
I see the point. Okay, yeah, this
yeah.
is bad. This is not good. But in the moment, you're like,
Like, you want
yeah,
to believe,
I'm willing to. This is like,
because the narrative is so strong, and because the context, the context of these people in this time,
yeah,
that option, that alternative is actually what they would prefer.
because they've been believing it for thousands of years and it becoming true. And they're like, imagine, right? Yeah, you would submit to that because you've been brainwashed all the time through generations that
Well,
this
yeah,
is going to
first of all, they
happen.
actually have been purposefully brainwashed for this, which is a whole, it makes a whole other spin on this, right? Because as we're
Yeah.
just talking, that's manipulation right there. And that was manipulation by even by people and agencies that those people are not even aware of. That's what real power looks like.
Yeah.
So the whole of people, like the whole of
But
a culture, has
but
been
but you
brainwashed by
see,
the
in this, obviously,
insidious belief from
it's
Bene
a
Gesserit.
sci-fi where he has the prescience ability to see the future. But let's just say if this is just all made up, right?
Mm.
Without the prescience, all that, he's just saying the things that you want to believe to be true, right? It's like what like Li Sang Ao Ge, what do you foresee for us? Green
Green
paradise.
paradise.
Yeah, you've been fed this the thousands of years. I'm just saying the right word,
Yeah,
and
that's what you want to hear.
that's what happens. Like, man, his face, it just always gets me. Like when he said green paradise, and he was like,
Yeah, at that point it's like religious ecstasy, because like,
so
whoa, the prophecy is true.
you see, right? We are so manipulatable. Like everything is so malleable. That's is the beautiful part, and it's also the scary thing about us is that we can be manipulated in many shape and form, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it is your belief. Like, what do you find your belief to be? And if there's something you believe so adamantly, you still have to question, okay, is that really the truth?
Is
Right?
that really
Can you
real? Yeah,
really be 100%
that's
believing in
big
this?
part of my inquiry into this topic. So keep that in mind, right? So the because part of what's being uh, put up for discussion in this video, I think, is the power of belief in general. And I want to explore that kind of majorly next. So let's get back to our points. These are all causing us this discussion spikes, which is exactly what we want. But I do want to keep going through these things.
Yeah.
We kind of, it's like a recursive process if you think about it, like this process of trying to go through the some specific material and go into a deep dive, but we're naturally having the tangents that kind of spring out
Because
from
you're
that.
trying to kind of make sense of it, and
Yes,
also
of what it means, right?
in essence, proving
And prove it or
this
disprove it and process it.
Yeah, is this
Exactly. That's exactly what I want to do. So we're going through these key positions and conclusions and insights, and we're evaluating them if they make sense, if they are true. So the next one was, still from that first video, is that human cognition necessarily operates with fuzzy, informal, and intuitive processes that cannot be fully formalized or reduced to logic and propositions. Right. This is why there are all kinds of abstract things exist. Just the whole field of human psychology. It's so weird, man. It's because it's not. I don't even think psychology is considered like as a science, because it's a science of what? The science of psyche. But what is that? It's again, we're going into this nebulous world of.
But bro, sometimes it feels so true though, because you see, there are cases like, for example, like there are times I wake up before the alarm. So it's almost as if, what is that all about? I have in my mind the night before, okay, I need to wake up at that time. Okay.
Yeah.
I set the alarm because I think, what if I, sleep over?
Yeah, you do need to make sure you wake up on that time.
But then every time it's like within the 1 minute difference before it went off, I'm awake. It's like, how do you know the time? Apparently it does. Apparently you know exactly the time,
exactly.
down to the minute, right?
That's a really good example. It happened to me too a few times where like I'd be believing like I have like an important thing I have to get to, right? So it's almost like there's an aspect of an anticipation that somehow affects what your subconscious programming, where you are able to, which some part of you makes you wake up at the right physical time.
Yeah.
How is that possible?
Like so accurate. It's just like, yep, within 1 minute before the alarm go off. It's like,
which is like perfect. This is exactly what you want, because you naturally do that, right? You naturally wake up.
But
things how does that work?
Right? It's like, and also this is the part where, you do kind of come to this realizing that, you do want to trust your instinct, because sometimes it is true. It's as if it already knows more than you do. And when you kind of override your instinct, actually what end up happening is you're wrong. Your instinct was right, and you should have trusted it, because somehow it's almost like distilled. You have an extrasensory understanding or something, like where it's not conscious. You're not, is under the subconscious or whatever. It understands more than you do consciously. That's how it feels like, it's.
Yeah, it seems like there's some kind of additional information processing happens somewhere below consciousness, but I don't know what that means. I don't understand what the rules of that are, and how does this work with your conscious self. And it's kind of, will have to be a bigger tangent maybe throughout the episodes, because we've talked about this before a little bit. But it's just what do you consider even yourself when you are aware of things like, I have these extra functions of which I don't govern. I don't exactly. There is some kind of correlation. There is some kind of relationship between the conscious and the other part of it, but it's not as direct, as simple as like, hey, Siri, wake me up at 7 a.m. and then you wake up, right? It may happen, it may not happen. Sometimes it doesn't happen. So it's not
the other thing,
reliable like that.
The other thing I think about is, the amazing part is that all of that thing is encoded in your DNA. So every individual that's ever born, it's like a pre-package, right? All the right information for you to become a human being is right there. It's right there, passed down in each. So meaning that, what about the components? This is what people are trying, neuroscientists are trying to understand. Okay, well, if we're born in with all this,
that information is there.
Can we somehow understand? It's
Unpack
like an
it.
iPhone. It's like you're given an iPhone, but you kind of want to open it up. It's like, okay, so what is it made of? Right? That's what we're trying to learn.
How does it work?
How does it work? Can we replicate it through like something like AI? Right? It's like that's what people are trying to do this, and that's kind of the part where you start to wonder. It's like, okay, so all that DNA code is encoded, but encodes all of that? What about consciousness? Is that something, a signal, or is that something within the brain, within the flesh?
That's all kinds of assumptionist theories go from that, which is need more data to make any kind of more concrete conclusions from that. But that also reminded me of the, like in Dune, right? The Paul's children and his sister, they got awoken, and got affected by spice, and they had awareness of all of the previous lifetimes
from before,
all of the previous lifetimes, including like generations, like hundreds of generations before, which is insane, right? Which is like, that's a different type of creature at that point. That's not like a human, really. That's something else. But that's like, I loved like the fact that this is why, like, for sure, Frank Herbert, he did some stuff for sure. Sure, because that is such a trippy idea.
You can't
because it's
come up with that, like,
definitely on the way to godhood type of thing, because you're definitely more than a human at that point. If you have a reference to lifetimes before you, and you have access to them, so you're like you're kind of all these lives at that point. But that's what God would be, right? The God is the repository of all lifetimes. But you have a repository of a swath of humans, like of your people, like of your blood that's been traveling throughout time for centuries, right?
Because if you're a being like that, you can basically do anything, because you can recall in any instance
so many details,
you would
so
remember.
Much wisdom and lessons and understanding of human world mechanics and psychology that you'll have from the get-go, from the start. Imagine that. Imagine growing up life with that knowledge. You're like unstoppable. You're genius. You're literally a genius.
But it's almost like, how do you even contain that within your head? It's like, which generation? It's like there's like 10,000.
It's like a catalog that you're somehow able to navigate, which is like a multidimensional matrix of information and experiences that somehow you're able to categorize, right? You can't even imagine that, but because it introduces so many dimensions to your consciousness, really.
Yeah.
Because you're able to distinguish, like, okay, it was this lifetime, was this person,
that
you have access to them, and you're not really them, but you're like what at that point? What do you even consider yourself to be when that's your consciousness? It's like we can't imagine what it's like to be, other things like bat or insect, but they have a very specific experience as well. Like a bat will have a very vastly different, I'm sure it's something, right? It's got to be some kind of perception, but it's so vastly different from a human perception and consciousness that we don't know what it is.
At least from the book Dune, they have that at the part where they're using Paul's sister and Leah as the example of how bad it could, how bad it could be, because she got possessed, right? Taken over by an ancestor, where they become you. So you lost control. You lost control of all these, almost like they can take over you.
Yeah, which kind of reminded me that, these sub-personalities, like they are like sub-personalities essentially. Because if you have a memory of being a certain way, that's kind of like if you believe into that too much, or if you interact with that too much, you can kind of shift to being that, because it's almost like a mind pattern that you can kind of get used to.
Which is it fascinated me with the examples of people who have multiple personality disorder. Like I read about these. It's fascinating how they have all these personas, and they can just switch, and they just completely that
Like a
person.
different person.
So
Yeah.
they will forget what they did before, but they become that person, and they will be doing things. And then when they come back, it's like, well, I don't remember what I did. Why like, they were in a room. They're like, wait, why am I wearing this?
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
am I?
So it's like
And
a
then when they
different
switch to
personalities
the other one remembers, oh,
continuity
I
is
did that.
between them. Yeah, yeah.
So it's fascinating how that person somehow had this
Yeah,
distinct.
that's like the complete mystery as well, right? Like, what is that? What
Yeah,
does that mean for who the person even is then? Which one are you?
because we could potentially all have that, right? I
Yeah,
could
yeah.
be a diversion of, but
It's just something happens that
the
in
other
your
problem, see,
brain somewhere,
is
right?
not just you, because the example where that person, one of them is a Serbian, speaks fluent Serbian, and some like how the
Yeah,
person never learned it,
yeah,
right, in his life, but somehow, so it means the subconscious somehow is able to tap into the information
yeah,
that's around the world.
yeah.
But how do you learn Serbian when you're in America? Like that example, he's definitely a person in America, but how? Somehow you receive that information about the language, a Serbian language, and somehow you
It's
just become
gotta be
that.
there. Yeah, the information gotta be there. It's gotta be accessible.
So that's the
I mean,
crazy part. Like,
that's why there is the concept of the collective unconscious, right? That's what it
yeah.
is because apparently
So
like it exists.
yeah, and so other example of people waking up one day speaking Japanese, fluent Japanese, when they don't
Right.
never learn it or something, like things
How
like
does that
that. It's
happen?
like
Yeah.
that's why you can't dismiss these ideas, thinking that they're just some kind of
Yeah, there, there's
how can
there's
you
definitely
explain
a
things like that?
mysterious component to everything essentially. Everything in human world, we don't understand nothing. We don't know how anything works. We don't understand how ourselves work, what anything is. It's all very very crazy, very confusing. But yeah, it stands with this point that human cognition in general operates with a lot of this fuzzy, informal, and intuitive processes that can be fully formalized or reduced to logic and propositions. So I agree with that. That's because anytime you try and start to define any of these things, you're coming up short. There's always some kind of a extra clause or extra exemption that you come up with that kind of destroys the whole idea of the categorization. So another one is attempts to formalize all of understanding leads to oversimplification, error, self-deception, not clarity. Yeah, so this is kind of how you come to conclusions, which, if you oversimplified something, if you reduce the complexity just to fit it into just to have some kind of understanding, yeah, the understanding that you have is far from the actual reality. That is true. Like that's what
Yeah.
happens every day, right? As we discussed, that makes sense. Like you don't spend all of your resources evaluating each and specific part of your experience, which if you were able to do that, you'd be able to, first of all, you'd have a much more granular even perception of reality, right? It's like being able to tell between the uh, different tones of a color, right? Like there are people who are like really distinguished, like, oh, this is beige and this is like this and this, but they're able to perceive and note and discern and interact with that much more resolution of reality. It's kind of like
Yeah.
that. So if you're able to do more of that in general, yeah, that would mean that you are engaging with a fuller and more accurate picture and version of reality. Um, yeah,
Because these things are possible. Like I was learning some of these animals, they're amazing how they have different type of visions, where they can see things that we normal humans can't see. So imagine a consciousness like that, but imagine that ability we have. We can have that kind of ability, then we will be able to see different colors, different spectrum,
yeah.
different, that is possible. These animals have it. It means that we can possibly have it, right? I mean, if it exists, then maybe there's a way to, but that's how you start thinking about these things.
Just today I saw a funny question on the consciousness subreddit. Somebody was asking, like, yeah, what if we had like 100 eyes instead of 2? How would that factor into our conscious experience? Like, would we have 100 screens or something, or would we have one integrated vision? And most people were considering that you would just have one integrated vision, like you do have right now, right?
Yeah.
You only have like there even whole meditation people who kind of made it their own thing. The fact that all really you see like a movie screen in front of you. It's all one integrated like field of vision, but it in your experience, the way you perceive it, if you concentrate on it, it's kind of like this infinite screen, really. Infinite, just in reality, it's infinite. Like no matter where you look, where you try to look for the edge, you don't find it. It's like it's everywhere, So
it's like those what's that drawing? Remember you sent me this clip about they did a short.
Oh yeah, the
where
infinite
they
zoom.
into that
That is
drawing,
so
and
freaking trippy.
it's trippy. Yeah,
I was like,
but
wow,
you
that's a
can.
great idea
Yeah,
too.
it's like
It's
you
like
zoom
fractal
in.
drawing,
Yeah, you
essentially,
can
right?
find out about this little part, and then and then you zoom out, and
That's a
then zoom this time.
brilliant. It should take off more, because yeah, it's crazy. You can zoom into this part.
Almost
I don't
infinite.
even
Seems infinite.
Yeah, I don't even understand how that works. So when you zoom in, somehow yeah, what happens when you zoom in? Like so you start with a blank canvas and say you draw a a hallway with a perspective. And if you zoom in, then it just, yeah, on that level, you see like bigger pixels of the existing object, but then you're able to pencil in the small. So it's like infinite dimensionality or something. Somehow,
Right,
I
but
don't
how
even
did
know how
they?
it works.
I wonder technically how did they?
That's so much information that you have to
Yeah, that zooming
compress
in.
and
What
zoom in and
about
zoom out. Yeah.
What about the pixel? Is that replaced with the new?
Yeah. Does it generate it? Yes.
I mean,
So
I'm
there's
sure
some kind of
technically,
technology there.
yeah, there's technically a way that they achieve it, but it
But it
looks
looked
as if,
amazing. Yeah. It
yeah,
looks as if it's like drawn in extra dimensions, right?
yeah. Is this what you're kind of referring to? The sense of that
No,
sort of
like
almost.
not like in that dimension. Just purely on like a flat level. When you're looking outside of your eyes, and you don't really have an edge to your vision, because where would it be? Like, how would you define it? Can you point to the edge of your vision? Where is it?
Do you mean like where were you physically able to see?
Yeah. Even if when you close your eyes, you still see something, right? You still see.
Yeah.
So where's the edge of your vision? It's just one vast expanse, right? It's infinite as far as you're concerned.
Yeah, it's just things in front of you. It's
Yeah.
just things are in front of you. But yeah, you do see
But it's
as
just
far as
big, big nothing as bigness, which is the same as, everythingness. But yeah, real vision is kind of like that, because I don't remember how they describe it, but like there are whole meditations you can do on this. There's
so it's a
the
visualization type of.
It's just something that you pay attention to. Like there is what was the guy's name? Douglas Harding or something. He wrote books on the whole topic of the fact that you don't see your head in the world, in reality.
Right.
And it's just like it's a meditation technique where you just concentrate on that fact, and you look out in the world, and you just keep concentrating on that fact that you're not even, there's not even a self for you to see. You just see the other stuff. You are being
Right.
the
You
world
see
at that
out
point,
there.
right?
Yeah.
You're being, when you're talking to other person, you are seeing that person, and you're kind of like you are being that person, because that's all you see. You're not aware of yourself. There's no yourself. There's just this guy. So it's trippy stuff like that. That yeah, reminds you that the oversimplification and reduction is just one way of. I guess we do it for the reason that, yeah, there is just too much stuff, and we do it. So by default, we do it with some things, right? It's just a matter of which of it that you are willing to dissect consciously and like understand that you are simplifying it. Because I find that that process definitely is helpful because, but you can, that's way too many things to do that with, you know? It's like delving into anything, right? If you dive into understanding the economic forces, yeah, like right now, my understanding is just zero. And as soon as I start delving into like, okay, right, I understand that there's these factors and these prices, you know, and these businesses, there's an ecosystem. I think I saw somebody was diagramming like the flow of capital in big tech, and the fact that it's just like it's a giant circle jerk
Oh
essentially.
yeah.
It's you know, same companies selling to subsidiaries.
Yep.
It's just a bunch of money circulations just to
That's what
save
happens.
as much money as possible in the
Which
same
is
hands.
why in the current timeline, there's a lot of junk. There's a lot of what do you call artificial, fake kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
derivative, things are
yeah.
being
It's all
created
done for
for.
the wrong purposes.
Yeah, there's no the real value is kind of evaporating. It's
Yeah,
sort of like harder to get real value anymore because not just inflation, but all the other
yeah. But I
things are
like
being done.
uh, this is why like I don't really even want to get anything. I don't want to buy anything
No,
because
don't buy. I mean,
there's
on one hand, I understand the economy is people buying stuff, but then
yeah.
some of the stuff, why would you want to
But
buy it?
what do you like? What do you? The other day, my dad, since he's now retired, right? There's lots of
Yeah,
free hands on his time on his hands. So naturally, he'd be browsing internet, you know,
I
and
try to
like,
buy
and you would
stuff.
buy like you would be shopping stuff. But that's like to
Yeah,
me, since I've done that on purpose a few times, and I've done that like oh, on less on purpose, like by being subconsciously manipulated, which
yeah,
I
yeah,
later recognized. So I've done both, but essentially is such an insidious freaking thing that you don't want it. You do not
yeah.
want to be buying stuff
No,
because first of all, the clutter, dude. Eventually, you get so much shit that you like don't even use. Then
yeah.
you eventually you just hoarding it. You just it's piling up and it's being
It's mental
dusty in your
burden,
place. And
right?
yeah, and
It's
then
also a
eventually you
mental
need to
burden.
like you
Get
have
rid
a
of
whole
it.
project to get rid of it, to sell it, etc. So for that reason alone, like I don't want stuff. But yeah, my dad was was just lying on the couch browsing, and he's asking me like, should I buy a safe? I'm like, definitely not. You don't have nothing to even put in there, okay? You don't
You
have any
you better off buy
savings.
you better off buy a fridge with all the fish that you
Yeah.
constantly bring home.
Yeah, I'm like, definitely not. Don't even think about it. We don't have a use for a safe in this
Dude,
house.
if I were you, I would be laughing my ass off.
Yeah,
And he'll
I
be like,
was.
"What?" He will be like, "What?"
Yes. Luckily, he concluded, yeah, that he doesn't need a safe. But that's the nature of it too, right? Because like, yeah, if you go into Amazon right now and
Yeah.
browse all the thousands of tech categories of products, yeah, you will find some products that you think you
Ima-
may need or want, but
Imagine sitting
not
there
really.
thinking to yourself,
Do I need a
"Do I need to
safe?
save?"
Hmm. Is this a purchase that I've been missing my whole life? Like a safe? Uh, yeah, stuff like
There you
this.
go.
So,
Yeah. So be wary what you desire, you know?
yeah,
Because that can always lead you astray.
yeah. But that's for another tangent. Another point is that rationalism often rejects mysticism and subjective experience prematurely, missing the possibility that mind and reality are one, an insight central to higher cognitive stages and to true understanding. So this is where it kind of gets into the meat of it and why he's talking about it. So essentially he gets into the claims of that there's a better, for all intents and purposes, like an enlightened way of seeing and perceiving and thinking about reality. Because he's alluding here to directly an insight central to higher cognitive stages and to understanding. But that to me, that reminds me of some kind of intellectual or spiritual evolution that you go through. I mean, how would you classify, like, what are different classifications of better and worse ways of thinking?
I mean, you know how, as intelligent as we are as humans, sometimes we're very dumb.
Hmm.
We do some dumbass stuff, even though we have the capacity to be intelligent, you know? But so that's also context based, right? When you use intelligence in what way? And there are different ways to define intelligence as well. Some people have different kinds of it, right? Some people are book smart, some people are, street smart, whatever. A different practical intelligence versus emotional intelligence versus all this type of stuff. So it's a way to, I don't know. I guess intelligence is just a way by which the ability for you to coordinate and sort of catalog and sort of refine all the information that's out there, right? It could be just sheer knowledge. It could be the subtext of stuff. Emotional intelligence is situational, right? You're reading into the room. You start seeing, oh, okay, I see what these people, how they will think, how they will feel, and therefore I will say these things at this time, and that kind of thing. So that's the smart part of it. You're trying to solve a problem. Like, okay, I see the situation, I see the board. How do I play this game, right? Is it just pure sheer knowledge that I can kind of figure the thing out, or is it just about people and what they want and kind of telegraphing their desires and things like that, right? So I mean, the different applications. So
Hmm.
maybe in different, it depends on the criteria then, right? In terms of whether it's good or bad or high or low. I mean, it's
Hmm.
all
Just more
depending
situational.
on the situation. Because in the situation, if you apply the wrong one, then you're dumb, right? If you use the wrong uh, the wrong praxis or wrong methods or wrong practice, then yeah, that will be you know um
I was just formulating this so because okay, I was chatting about these videos with AI because I was trying to break out down some ideas and see if I understand them correctly, and actually that's been helpful. So I was keep chatting with it about it. I was just asking this question as well because I got curious about this idea, yeah, of different, I guess, categories or levels of thinking, maybe, and it gave out some of the, like, an interesting spectrum here, essentially. So you could think about modes of thinking as a spectrum. Um, a useful classification, minding that what these videos talked about is irrational or pre-rational thinking. So the lowest levels, pre-rational, where there's no rationality. Then practical reasonableness. So that's where, yeah, it's situationally appropriate, I guess. Then formal rationality, which is closer to what is the oh yeah, it's in the beginning when we're talking about definition of rationality. We talked about the plain language sense, but the philosophical sense, rationality is kind of split into two broad categories. One is epistemic rationality, which concerns having well-supported beliefs, and instrumental rationality, which concerns choosing effective means to achieve your goals. So one is uh, yeah, the having well-supported beliefs means that you are saying something about reality, which has to be verifiably and demonstrably true. That's one way to say rational, right? Epistemic rationality, which means that you, it's verifiable. Yeah, you can confirm that it's true through some kind of demonstration. And the second one, instrumental rationality, it's choosing effective means to achieve your goals, which I found it's because that's a completely different subtext, right?
right.
So see, philosophy delves deeper into these things, and it's been able to discern two different threads of meaning behind one term. So they had to invent the categories of that term: epistemic rationality, instrumental rationality. So I brought us back to that just to remind that there are different definitions of rationality. So you have to remember all of this technically, when you're thinking about this stuff. Because now when you're thinking about rationality in the context of these guys' teachings, you have to remember that this is what he means. Like, he means all of these aspects. So from that standpoint, I do like and respect and feel grateful for such discussions, because they make you take a closer look at all of these components that are involved, right? But there are obviously some claims here that do go beyond your rational way of thinking, and that's what I find curious and fascinating, and etc. But this is the process of trying to understand it. Like, what does it mean? What are you actually saying? So in his framework, there's a level beyond rationality. So after formal rationality, there's also rationalism, where you like think that rationality is the top way to think about everything. After that, there is a contemplative or phenomenological inquiry. So I think that's actual philosophy. So philosophy is a way of thinking. And it's true. If you are a philosopher and you went to and studied that stuff for years and you're thinking about it that way, that's a whole way of thinking. Like, once you learn that stuff, you can't really ignore it. You do have that in your toolbox. It does color your worldview, essentially, with that framework of deep contemplative evaluation, essentially. Beyond that, there is mystical experience and then meta-rational integration. So that's what this guy, I think, is leading to, because he talked about mystical experience, because he's done a lot of meditation and psychedelics. So he has reference of that. And then meta-rational integration, I think that's what he is leading up to. He's trying to go into some kind of, or maybe like post-rational way of thinking, some kind of integrated way that combines the mystery of subjective experience with the rigidity or objectivity of external world.
Yeah, that's always a hard thing to.
But even then, how would you define mystical experience? What is that?
Something that's you can't use rational explanation to explain, right?
Yeah.
That's the
So
typical
mystical,
definition.
that's another thing. There's so many synonyms to things that you legit
Yeah.
like. It's difficult sometimes, because in this breakdown, it's equating mystical and non-dual, and what it does is it's reports states of unity, ego transcendence, and loss of separation. Yeah, that is like a mystical transcendental type of experience, which is like, that doesn't happen in your regular normal day consciousness, really. Not to the extent, like, or maybe it does. Maybe like when that crowd thinking, group thinking mode activates more, because if you're in a crowd of people and there's like, they're galvanized, you'll feel that.
Yeah.
You'll feel that. Like, if you're in the middle of a crowd that's like on a concert, you feel it, right? You feel that energy. And if you're in the middle of a riot somewhere, oh, you'll feel that.
Yeah.
So there's some kind of, definitely, like, the psychic aspect to it, right? Because it connected to emotions, because if there's an intense emotion, it's undeniable that it's like it affects your whole way of being, when you feel it.
Because, see, the problem is that overall, I think humans have we have a desire for order, for uh, kind of concreteness and certainty, right? That's certainly we have a drive for that, because obviously that makes our life easier by knowing what's going to happen, right? But the problem also, there's also the other aspects, like sometimes we can't sit down. Right? Like, we want new things to happen, right?
Hmm.
Like, imagine if you know everything. If you already know every single factor, then that's just boring. You will know everything. You wouldn't have anything that's new experience, if you already know how things are going to happen. So there's also that opposite drive to just like yeah, we don't want to be bored. We want new things to happen, novel experiences. So, but obviously the world is chaotic enough that you're never short of not knowing. Okay, there's just a lot of not knowing than knowing. So we don't have a problem with that. But but people in their own lives try to desire, oh, I want known quantities, right? You want to do something, you want to be able to plan for time and this and that. Then you have to know more
Yeah,
of the whole thing
yeah,
for you to do that. Otherwise, your day just going to be ruined because of, oh, unexpected, this, that,
yeah.
and
So that's kind of like what the AI was breaking down in their response, is that essentially to the practical takeaway is that rationality, and I don't think anybody argues with that, but the way to think about this rationality and essentially it's physical world versus subjective experience. So the physical world behaves according to certain criteria, a lot of which we can anticipate and we can plan and we can interact with. So
yeah,
that's in the realm of rationality and reasonableness, and that's the application for that. But then the other part of it is that essentially for examining your own experience, you are the authority, so you have to use introspection and meditation or whatever you want to engage with that as well and treat it uh, mm, as equally real and important part of reality. I think that's like the healthy balanced take on it, which because that's what the AI was like highlighting to me, because I was prompting it to I was I explained to it that I don't understand this thing, so it's trying to explain it to me in my terms. So I find this helpful because yeah, I can get behind that because that's what the meditative kind of traditions all point to. Your experience, your direct experience, that you can do stuff with it, and that's somewhat separate from the external world, because you can sit down, close your eyes and you'll be in your own world,
right.
and
You
there will
can
be like a
choose,
whole
right?
world there.
You
There'll
can
be,
choose to do these things
yeah,
that kind of delve deeper to your own subconscious.
yeah. So that yeah, that has to do with this point that we started. So rationalism often rejects mysticism and subjective experience prematurely, missing the possibility. Yeah, that's where that main claim that is really
Right.
the crux of it, that the mind and reality are one. So the claim here that the mind and reality are one, I don't understand what that means. That breaks me. The mind and reality are one. That's an insight central to higher cognitive stages and true understanding. That's his whole point, right? He's saying
Huh.
reality is a dream, reality and mind are one. I don't understand what
So
that means.
again, I feel like this is the part where I guess I wouldn't necessarily call it a error of understand. Well, no, how will I say this? The idea I'm trying to say here is that you know how Einstein was trying to find a overarching uh what do you call that, theories of describing physical reality that combines the world of the macro classical physics and the quantum mechanics, and he couldn't do it. So apparently he couldn't figure it out. Like obviously he wanted a unified theory because that would be nice, right? It would be like tie it with a nice bow and explain all the parts from the bigger stuff all the way down to the lowest, but he couldn't do it. He's like, something is not right. I couldn't figure this out. So I think in the same manner, I think he in this case is trying to find a unifying theory about this would be very nice if it's true to be able to kind of correlate everything and that, yep, everything is explainable. But I feel like that's not a very, at least not a very easy thing to do, and almost virtually impossible to do. I don't think sometimes there are things that just does not work in the theory, does not kind of, so can you really be like you find this thing and then you say this. Oh, this is explaining everything. This is explaining all the aspects. I mean, yeah, maybe, but fictionally, sure. But how do you
I'm
prove
not
that
sure.
this is the case?
I'm also not sure exactly what it explains because I've interacted with this idea before. I've actually had something close to glimpses of insights from reading Ken Wilber's books because he is very, very big on non-duality. He's written many, many books. And some of those texts, like I was really, really concentrated on them and very poetic. So it's almost like reads almost like a poetry, right? Which is describes like, this is reality, this is how I experience it. And it kind of invites you to consider it from that same perspective. And it's like, I got really close where like I was just sitting there like in a cafe. I remember reading that stuff and I was just like, looking outside, I'm like, yeah, that like I do see that perspective. Like it's a little perspective type of thing, which is essentially the basic idea is that in your ordinary experience as you are right now, it feels like there's a thinker who is aware of a separate world, but some of these traditions describe that that under careful attention, that feeling of I or inner observer can disappear, living experience without a separate experiencer standing behind it. So that's the big claim that it's an idea. To me, it's an idea because they're saying that you can somehow do something to your perception, like shift your perspective somehow through what, I don't know what, through reading these words or whatever, where there's only the experience left. So no experience or just experience. I don't know how to even evaluate that. But wouldn't there be no way to tell that if that happened? Because that's like the absence of self-referential thought, essentially.
Right. But that would happen
that's not there.
When you're in a flow state, wouldn't that be kind of
yes,
happens,
I think so, right? Like when I'm in a flow state, you disappear for sure. Is that what it's meant by that? But then why is that just a state though? So you're in some kind of mode when you're in that flow state, and it feels like it's like playing a video game, right? When you get really immersed, you definitely forget about yourself. There's just the game. You're just immersed.
The game and the experience of it.
But what does that mean? What happens to you and your sense of I in that scenario?
Temporarily got
is your like attention so close to the reality that you're witnessing, you're so immersed in it that you forget about yourself. That's the only way I can think of it.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of attention. Like something happens to your attention. It gets really like captivated, almost like, right? To the point where you're like, there's just the experience. So then that's the only thing but that's not what your life is. You're not able to be in constant state of flow, right? That's the dream, but like that's not how any of it works. Because would you do that?
And also that
what would
state
be required?
Is doing something specific. Because when you change the setting or to change the activity,
right, it has to be like a it has to be like a stable kind of semi-predictable
because the moment you realize that other things have to take precedence or something,
it breaks your concentration, or like it reroutes your attention, then you have to switch. There's definitely something to it. That's why like you can zone out to video games, because especially when you've gotten used to the game, like the Path of Exile, you can zone out to it once you clearing out maps. It all becomes like this one kind of repetitive process, but because you definitely can get used to it, because it's the same buttons, you mashing them in the same configuration, the same rhythm. Sometimes you definitely get used to that.
Love that. Humans love those repetitions sometimes,
That's like, but yeah, you can do that with a lot of things. You can do that with wood chopping. You can do that even with with a job, like you're welding. You definitely could go into flow state there, I think, stuff like that. So, but that's really anything repetitive then, right?
Yeah, it's something that requires your concentration and also maybe in a way not something difficult, because if you're
Yeah.
if the thing is really difficult, you're out of it. You're like you try to,
Yeah.
so you're
No,
not actually.
I remember, I think it's one of the definitions of the state of flow is that it has to be in this optimal zone of your ability, where it's
Yeah,
not too hard and not too easy. So it
yeah,
still requires your presence, but it's like, oh, I can do it. Like I can do it, but
yeah,
it requires my presence.
yeah,
That type of difficulty. Cool.
yeah. So it's a state by which you can tap into where you're trying to do something that's difficult, but not difficult enough that you're gonna lose it. You're gonna completely botch it. So there's that interest. You're like, I want to get this done. I want to get this thing completed in the way that I want it, right? And you engage in this activity, whatever that is. Yeah, you can lose your sense of self. So that is malleable. You can change your awareness, right? Like at different times, are you aware of different things? And that's the sense of self, and you can temporarily lose it. You can gain it. You can, so that's the aspect of the human condition then, right? You are naturally, experientially, this is what's given. So now going back to that idea that if his theory is that, okay, your mind and reality is one,
Mm-hmm. I was
then
just
which
querying the AI further on this specific point, and there could be three meanings behind this. And I think I see now like one, because one of them is really triggering me. The three meanings, the epistemic meaning is that you never encounter a world outside experience. You only ever know reality as it appears in consciousness. I agree with that.
right?
That makes sense to me. That is a true
Yeah.
statement because the reality can only be known to you through your senses. So your vision is something that's already converted in your perception. So your vision is not reality. We already know that. The second meaning, phenomenological meaning. In meditation or non-dual states, the sense of separation between observer and observed can dissolve. So we can say that's a state of flow. That's true. That also happens. But that's a temporary state of your attention. And then the
Okay.
metaphysical meaning. Reality itself is fundamentally mental, conscious, or one mind. That's the one I have problems with because that's
Isn't that this
there's
what
no.
that statement does that um does it dis not disprove does that in this that would just negates the physical reality then, right? If it's meant.
It means that the only reality is mental reality, which means that what he would said in his later comment is that reality is a dream. But if it's a dream, it means that it's being dreamed up, but
Simulated.
some kind of mind, and that mind is the only thing that exists.
Well, then you can just isn't that just saying it's like the Matrix? You constructed this entire all the physical reality is just constructed because you are experiencing everything, and because yeah, you can say everything can be simulated, right? It could be as real as it looks, as real
But
as with all the rules of the
but what
physical law and
but
stuff that.
what for like first of all, what does that matter? If it
Right,
is
it
that way,
doesn't,
what does that
right?
change?
Yeah, you wouldn't know, right?
Because that's the part I'm trying to get to. Like if
Unless you can somehow, like the Matrix, be jacked out and view it with another, kind of with another lens,
yeah,
waking up, so to speak.
yeah.
But that doesn't say anything. Then it's just a
What
way
is
of,
what is the purpose of this
because
knowledge?
you could
Say
saying he could be saying, okay, well, life is simulated. Then it could be the
hmm,
same idea, right? Could be the same
yeah.
thing. Everything is just as
Yeah,
because you can
imagine,
only
simulated,
experience.
dreamed up, whatever you want
Yeah,
to call it.
so you basically, yeah, all the rules and everything, it works, but then you dreamed it up, meaning that the real reality is not this, or somehow. But why would you dream it then? Isn't that a process outside of the reality? Like when you sleep, you are sleeping, but you're experiencing something in the dream space, that's meaning a separate space, right?
Exactly.
Why wouldn't they just be the reality? I could just be experiencing the reality experientially.
Well, the example of the dream is the most popular one given in these traditions, because essentially they point to the reality of the dreamer and the dreamed. Because you have a dream and you see a character like that, and you think that this character is you, but it's a dream. So what happens when you wake up to the reality of that dream?
Right. There's still the waking up versus dreaming, right?
Yeah.
So there's dichotomy of that two different state.
Yeah.
So
But then you experience both. That's how you know what's what. Because the dream, yes, it is imagination. It happened in your mind. You saw it. It felt real at the time of it happening. But once you woke up, it's just a distant memory, and you are in a physical, much more real and concrete world, which has stability, in which there's continuity and stuff. That's how we define the reality of the physical world and unreality of the dream world. But we can compare both. We have access to both. So
right.
this claims that this physical reality is a dream.
So
There's
how
no, you would
okay,
have
so
to
but
wake up and see the real reality then.
okay,
That's the
which
only way you would,
is
yeah, that's the only way to
but
confirm that this is true.
but he's haven't defined it what that reality is then, right? Just the fact that what we witness is the dream state and you need to wake up and
Yeah,
that's basically it.
I think so. Yeah. So
So then how
let's
would you
go.
know what's the real one then?
That's the real question. So let's see what how maybe he approaches this gradually. But I don't remember that I don't think he covered that yet. He's trying to lead up to that, I think. So let's go through the next part, see if they bring any clarity. The critique of rationalism is not a rejection of reason, but a call to transcend its limits through meta-rationality and post-rational cognition. So again, he's kind of introduces that there's a better way to think. That's what I'm taking away from this, right?
Okay.
And I think so far the practical takeaways is that yeah, you need to pay attention to your experience. You need to remember that your mental world essentially very much affects your perception and how what you think about reality. So I think that's a great point. You do have to keep that in mind as much as possible. That's itself kind of like as a meta thinking principle or a skill, right? That's kind of like a meta-cognition, meta-awareness type of skill. Remembering that your perception does not equal reality. I think that's the greatest and healthiest takeaway from this so far. Then that last point from that first video is that philosophy and meta-rational reflection are necessary to uncover and question the assumptions of rationalism that science alone cannot address. So that's an emphasis on the fact that, yeah, you just thinking about this stuff alone is a valuable process for you to kind of like be staying on your toes and making sure you, I guess, keep digging into, keep confirming constantly what's real and what's not real. At least that's what it means to me. That's the type of value that I espoused in my explorations. But I don't know. It kind of seems endless. It's just like, to me, it seems like another game that you can play, because all these concepts that they never end.
Yeah, because also the other part is you also kind of have to live a little. You can't just be like absorbing all
Right.
these tenets and be like, okay, I'm gonna live my life exactly as
Yeah.
prescribed. Like that's not a living,
But
right?
that's
You're
not
like,
prescribed, right? That's
I mean, it's like
that's you not forfeited, but you're essentially using all your life trying to understand
right,
what reality is instead of just
yeah.
living, right? Which is like,
But
what
the
is
other
living to
problem,
you? Like,
see,
what
but the
is,
other problem is sometimes you can be too aware. You can be so self-aware that like every single thing is almost like you're recording yourself. Then you become the
yeah,
opposite of flow state, where you're
yeah,
never in flow state. You're always
yeah, yeah,
aware
yeah.
of what you're doing, which is
Yeah, it's
It's
kind of
getting in the
like
way.
if you put like boots on a cat, it's
Yeah.
suddenly like, it's like
It's like,
I don't know
no,
how to walk
no,
now.
yeah.
It becomes too aware of like this extra stuff
The
on it,
thing, yeah, the extra thing on the
so it
paw,
becomes like
exactly.
unnatural. You know, that it reminds me of that, the fact that, um, yeah, that you true you that is kind of like the opposite of flow state. But
Yeah,
can you
because you'll
get
be
into the flow
aware.
state thinking about the reality? Like, I don't know. Yeah,
Because the essence of the flow state is you forget yourself. You're
yeah,
immersed within the experience of
you're just immersed in the process. The
yeah.
process is just happening and nothing. There's no friction, right? It just keeps flowing. It's the state of flow.
Because you were constantly aware. Oh, I'm doing this. Okay, now
That's not
I'm
gonna work.
feeling this. That's not. It's the opposite of a
Yeah,
flow. So
you're interrupting this continuous process of perception and interaction, where it actually
yeah,
is becomes one. Interesting.
because it's almost like that perception is almost like you have to be passive in order to tap into that flow state of experiencing everything and not actively getting in the way of like, because analysis takes effort, right? Analysis takes, you gotta play around with different sets of information and analyze, and you gotta use your brain, right? You gotta burn brain power to do that. So that's being aware of the process. So you're not lost of the process. You're doing the process. So meaning that you are actively using your sense of self, right? You're aware that you're processing the thing,
Yeah.
So I don't know if you. So there are different things, man. There are different states. There are different, because there's no way to use one thing to essentially say, oh, you should be in this state at all times.
Yeah.
I mean, life is different, man. There are different, all kinds of different. It's almost like the best way to do it is almost just like it's like a surfer, It go by vibe. You can feel the wave. Like, okay, the big one is coming. I can, there's different way to surf, different way to kind of you play around with how it feels in that moment, in that location.
Yeah.
Now, how
But I
just the
mean,
water
at this
interacts.
rate, like maybe even that's what, these ideas are pointing to. It might be that as well. It's just I see the difficulty of encoding like some of these
Right.
ideas, into words, and then
Yeah.
to explain it in a certain order and in a certain way where it all makes sense. Because I this I think, yeah, this guy just understands and knows more on the topic than me, and that's the real
But the
problem
real
here. That
danger of that is also your knowledge is also your
Yeah,
prison.
but I,
The
I
more
also
you
I don't want to
know,
just like listen to somebody and think, oh, this is true, because that's what started happening to me. I started being extra critical and everything. And if anything, this helps me being aware of what I actually understand and what actually doesn't make sense. Because these days, what I'm doing is like, I'm watching for that, right? Like, because I'm watching it for specifically so I don't just accept stuff for like, oh, that's true because somebody says so. If I read it and I don't have a reference in my experience to it, or I haven't seen the world work that way, then it's doesn't make sense to me. Then it's either it's bullshit or I'm missing something. So that's the
wait,
process.
hold on. I think we can bring 40K into this. Isn't it the idea that what was that? That wasn't that a storyline where the chaos existence is necessary because the empire of man the emperor understood that. Isn't that the case? That you need the chaos for this to like. Wasn't you explaining this to me one time?
I
Maybe
think
I
so. Let's see.
misremember it. But the idea that is almost like chaos is the necessary evil. Like you need this stuff. How would you tell all your people that you need to eradicate the evil, but that's your whole point of existence is the process of establishing an empire that is trying to eliminate chaos, but you can't do it.
Oh yeah, you know what? Now that you talk about this, kind of reminds me that there still seems to be some kind of dichotomy, essentially,
Right.
between chaos and order, right? Mental versus physical reality,
Because sometimes if you
emotions versus facts, I guess.
Because look,
or logic.
if I were living in the 40K universe, I know I will be a disciple of chaos. Which one, I don't know, but for sure, because I empathize with their thinking. It's like, yeah, that makes sense. Of course, these are aspects of...
Slanesh would get me, I know that.
Yeah, that's probably, yeah. I mean, so you see, right?
Or
why
Sage,
would people
maybe.
fall to chaos? It's like, well, yeah, it makes sense. Why would you live in these hive worlds
It's
of
some kind of,
drudgery and
yeah, it caters
under...
to some kind of your basest instincts. That's why it's so
Right,
powerful. So
which
I
is the
was,
mental aspect of that. Imagine if the warp is a manifestation of all these subconscious or collective unconscious, and that's what it will be, right? And these gods are feeding on these feelings, basically, right? And the more you worship them, the more you feed them the the essence that they want. But anyway, this is, again, it's a fictional take, but the idea is kind of, yeah, like sometimes you need the justification. This is why, the whole, for example, just really briefly, the war on terror. I will be wanting to believe in the conspiracy theory that they actually created the terrorists in which that they're fighting. I mean, right? I
story
mean,
is all in the world, yeah. That
as
happens all the
always,
time.
yeah, it's
Uh,
because why would you need justifications, right? For all the things that you do, you need justification. Why else you would be doing it? You need to justify to the world, oh, this is the reason why we do this. Sometimes that's just how it end up being. So, something doesn't quite, like, a lot of things in the world is it doesn't quite fit, like the puzzle pieces. There's always something missing, or always something unquantified, right? You can't just like quantify everything and make it all nice and neat, and this is a part of that Japanese philosophy of like the beauty of the imperfect, right?
hmm.
I forgot is that the wasabi? There's a specific
Wabi
word.
sabi.
Yeah,
Wabi sabi.
wasabi, not wasabi.
Close.
Yeah, yeah. The whole idea of like, yeah, wasabi, bro.
It's wasabi.
Yeah, it's wasabi. It's canon now. Okay. I need to correct their
Oh,
Japanese.
such
Okay, that
wasabi.
they got it wrong. Okay, I got it right. Yeah, the concept of like just embrace the way it is, right? I mean, don't chase the perfection, because that doesn't exist.
Hmm.
Because I think people tend to want to quantify, like I said, right? Even Einstein was bashing his brain out trying to figure out like an overall theory of everything. He was trying, because it's like it's just makes sense in his head, right? You should be able to explain everything, right? If I can explain general relativity and all this stuff, then it must make it make sense. That was what he tried to do, and then it doesn't make sense, And then even all these quantum physicists, they're like, yeah, we we can kind of understand what it's doing, but we don't understand what does it mean according to overarching theories or whatever. No, if you specifically study the quantum mechanics, it makes sense. It has its own rules and everything, but then when you try to put that along with everything else, it doesn't. It's like magic, right? It's like it does not fit. It doesn't fit into the whole theory. So I think humans just have OCD, man. Like we just want everything, just like give me the thing. Like I don't want any unquantifiable thing. I just want the whole explain it, and so I don't have to worry about it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Goes back to what we're thinking. Like the concept that people want things to make sense. They, even if it's fake, even if it's false, they wanted that story to just make sense. Okay, now I can just go on with my life instead of worrying about, oh, why does this thing fit together? Like that's just, So, but reality, the problem is so complex that somehow we couldn't explain it like completely, right? There's always something missing or something like it doesn't
Yeah,
really,
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's that
it
some
doesn't
kind of
jive well, and
fundamental
we can only say,
problem in
well,
the
it
whole
works in this
enterprise.
case, and we understand the idea of entropy and all this kind of complexity of of reality and all that, but yeah, it's the same way as with the stock market. Is it going up or down? We don't know,
Hmm.
right? It's how do you not know? There's just a whole bunch of people buying, a whole bunch of people selling, but
Yeah,
nope.
it's simple.
With
It's
that
either up or
quantity,
down.
you just can't say where it is going to be on the
Yeah, so many forces like pushing against each other that you don't know which one tips it which way at what point, right? Because it's too many of them.
There's too many
And
factors
so many
to
levels, right?
account.
Small forces, big forces, together they make bigger forces.
And your mental capacity, your ability to understand,
Yeah, you just get overwhelmed.
it's outside of those forces, meaning you have to understand the phenomenon, right?
Yeah.
You're looking at this thing, and it's also graph upon graph. It's like this real situation being represented on a map, and you're
Yeah,
reading
there's
the
so many
map about the map,
dimensions to this information.
right? You're reading the map about the map.
It's representations,
so
yeah.
the signifier and the signified is just so many degrees of
So much conversion of meaning, information, and extrapolation.
Right. So you're just trying to kind of extract the abstract part of it.
Yeah.
But you can say you try to understand it, but can you really understand? You can't put
Yeah,
all your
you're
head
trying
up.
to extract there's an aspect of reality. Like imagine right now, there's a certain these forces, they're at play. They're actually making those influences on the prices, on the markets. It's just there's so many of them, and they're doing it for so many different reasons that like nobody knows that. Nobody knows what that reality actually is. But it's true, it's reality, it's happening right now. This company buys this company just issued all this oil, but it's just like millions of this stuff all across the globe. And it's all factors into the same economy, the same forces, the same pricing movements and pressures and baselines. So it's weird that you can be talking about this. Yeah, this is this one company, but it's evaluated at this because of all these myriads of other external factors, and it's all one big part of one big economy.
Which is the big enticing part that we are, we're very much seduced by the idea of AI because of the fact that this system
could be the one that could comprehend,
can calculate all of this and give us something, kind of like that. Give us all the information that we need, all the important one that we want, right? You can prompt
Just tell me where
right?
the wind is blowing. Come on.
Yeah. So that's the thing.
Should I buy Apple and hold it for 10 years? Will I be rich?
People want
just
magic.
Tell me
he just want the magic button, right? We want to create the magic button. We press one thing and then tell us exactly what to do.
Give me a surefire, foolproof way. Okay.
This is like what? It's like that fable, right? Mirror, mirror on the wall.
Yeah.
Tell me how the market's gonna go.
Yeah, that's the modern version.
That's basically what we're trying to create, right?
If you can invent an app for that, that would be the app, like the mirror, mirror on the wall. Where's the market gonna go?
That's the thing that people are always betting on, this because of in their heads, like, yeah, I can get rich if I get it right. Dude, I still can't comprehend the fact that we have poly market and things like that, where people just
keeps bothering you.
It bothers me, right? Just people just gamble about events, like, oh yeah, this is gonna happen, 100% gonna happen. I'm gonna bet $1 million on this. If it happens, I'm gonna be.
That's like a new type of this is the last level of degeneracy. Essentially.
This is full degen. Yeah, this is you thought crypto degen was crazy. This is the next level.
The next level. I'm not getting on that train. All right, I'm not getting on that train.
I'm not. No, man. It's not gonna end.
That's insane.
Yeah, but
sounds
that's
fun.
What's
though.
going on. That's what's going on. People be like betting on their fucking life savings. Like, yep, this is gonna happen, man.
Dumb. That's too dumb.
It's another level of options, but like actual things happening.
But that's like
right?
pure nitrous gambling.
Yeah,
it's not based on anything really.
I mean, for certain individual, they win because they're the insider. They are the one that creating these events, so they know, right? Yeah. So yeah, for them, for sure, they can because they have the power to do so. But
that's essentially that's the only way to reason you want to play or gamble is that when you are on the inside, you are either on the inside or you crack the system. You're a genius. You'll crack the system. Like those people who go to casinos and win at counting cards and stuff. That's actually what you can physically do. Like, I still can't imagine how the hell that's possible because you have to essentially hold a replica of reality in your mind and you remember like the location of 52 cards in physical reality, but in your mind. It's insane that people can do that. But it's totally doable apparently, because people have done it. And it's as simple because you just count it, right? You know where the cards are. So you're technically not gaming because you know exactly
Yeah.
what reality you're interacting with.
And you
But
see,
people
and
like
this is,
casinos consider that cheating. That's the funny part.
but you see, that's the part where we kind of hit the wall of our human biological ability to remember
Hmm.
and to calculate. And that is just, again, this is just fascinating me about Dune. The fact that in that universe, you have mentats, people who
Hmm.
become computers just by sheer practice and will and, you know,
Yeah.
what have you. I wonder if that's possible. Probably. There's some speed calculation people can do. Like they just like crazy. They can calculate
Yeah.
up to
There's
that
definitely
high.
some faculties that you can
So you
train, but
can train
it's
yourself too.
yeah, but
But
that's
that's how,
like it's like one of it's like any skill essentially. You have to practice it your whole life because
yeah.
yeah, you
Because
just
that's
stop
what
when
I
it
find.
deteriorates.
I constantly feel the edge of my ability. It's almost like, oh yeah, I'm hitting a wall. It's like, oh yeah, this is as far as I go now currently.
Yeah.
Because you've realized your limitations. Like, okay, currently, yeah,
Yeah, it's so
this is
frustrating.
the it is
I
frustrating.
experience it in games and in chess all the time, right? Like I'm looking at it directly, like, but there's so much information that is at
Yeah.
hand. This like I'm aware that I'm not able to consider the full volume and extent of information and all the corollaries, right? Like all the things that should be apparent to me because they're there, because if this plus this, like if I had the time and list them out and like analyze it, it's okay.
But
But
you don't have the
when
time.
the speed is there, like you have to be like that's the interesting part. It's like how do you it's like you have to figure out how to compress that algorithm and be faster. So it's one thing is like being able to think correctly. It's the second part is doing it fast. Like the second, it's like that's what intelligence is essentially, is the ability, both the capacity to consider a huge amount of information and then do it quickly. Because it's like a combination at that point, right? Like if you have a program code, there's a quick way, like there's a quick, there's a program you can code it a million different ways. You can write a bunch whole of code or a short amount of code. So the shorter of code, that's the winning program essentially, because it's
So
smaller, it takes less space, triggers, executes quicker.
so that means intelligence is computation,
It's efficiency.
right?
It's
You
efficiency and
computate
computation.
the factors and you come up with
Because
a
if you're, it's, but it comes to, for me, it comes back to utility because inevitably an intelligent mind, the one that understands, it understands what can be done. It becomes an agent in reality. That's why Paul became the emperor, because he had the capabilities to or arrange all of that and orchestrate all of that. Because he saw this is how reality is. I have all these extra layers of information on top of everybody else, and I know if I do this, this, and this, it's like chess. You do all these moves, and you get the king. It's
yeah.
exactly the same thing. You just have
And
awareness of all of that.
right. And it's also I maybe that's not the right word, but self-directed, self-centered because it's like he put himself in the middle because he think he can fix it, right? He didn't just abdicate the responsibility of it is what it is. I can't do anything. He's like, well, I have the ability, therefore,
Well, then that's the whole kind of other part of the story is that I'm only now kind of trying to understand it. Is that he kind of got trapped by prescience, right?
right.
That's another part of it. Is that
He couldn't see it past the
because like I'm really getting into it like in the what is it third book at this point I'm reading, but essentially, yeah, it made me think about the whole very concept of it, and it's true because if you try to imagine what it would be like to be aware of the future right now, then it's not. How do you distinguish it from like what does it mean? It's not. It's not yet, but it's already like as written. Like
I think
how would it work?
I think it's like potential future, right?
Yeah, but
He sees all the possibilities by which it can unfold, and he can read the sort of the probability. Like this is most likely going to
hmm.
happen. I guess that's how it.
So it is some kind of sense that it's that it Oh yeah, okay. Even at that level, it kind of is an intelligence, because it's intelligence so great that it's able to project all the variables of happening of what's the configuration of reality right now. It's able to project all their states. That means all these other states are possible. That's how I can see it. But that means that's intelligence, because we can do it right now. It's just very limited. Right now, with the level of my intelligence, is that if I go to the gym 3 times a week, I won't get fat, okay? And those are the possibilities that I care about. And that works. But that's the extent of it. Ideally, I should be doing much more. I should be thinking about all kinds of bigger, more important things than
You
that.
should be unfolding highliners, okay? Being the guild. Because that's the thing, right? They fold the space by calculating all the possible space, like, because you don't want to materialize in the middle of a
Yeah.
planet or something. So it's the idea that they need to find the right space
Hmm.
in time and somehow navigate that. So meaning that they had to calculate. It's like chess. Like they kind of mentally see all the space that you can go,
Yeah. So
and they
another,
found the right
yeah, another
path, right? So
example
the
of the fact
idea,
that you kind of like imagine the reality and then physically navigate to it. Actually, that whole concept of prescience, I think Rick and Morty did an episode on that. I realized they did that, where Morty, he had like some kind of divination crystal, which also was showing you the
oh
possibilities in future. Remember, and he was using it as in like, okay, if I make step here, oh, looks like that future is possible. So he was using the crystal to guide all his actions without understanding any of it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that was the irony, because at the end of it, the future that he envisioned, it wasn't actually the situation that he thought it was. Because he wanted to be with like Jessica from Girls from School. But in that scenario that he saw, he was an old dying man in some weird scenario where she was near his deathbed.
Oh
But,
yeah, I remember
right?
that part. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that scenario was so far from the reality that he would actually want, that he didn't even think about it. He was just doing whatever to end up in that
The
possibility,
desire. Yeah,
which
yeah.
I think that might be an intentional, nice little parallel with the Dune. I think, because I mean it's too much of a coincidence, because that's kind of what happened to Paul. I think, because he thought that, oh, this gift of prescience, but in reality he got trapped by it. That's what they were described later in the books, because his son understood it. He was saying it, like, I remember it's written like that, oh, my dad got trapped by prescience, I will not repeat his mistakes.
Yeah, because the
So
son sees way more than he does. So he's, you know, he's not abomination. He's able
it's
to
it's always, yeah, it's always
bypass
a
the,
matter of, see, like the perspective changes everything, because
yeah.
the further you go, like the less. So if you like, yeah, this is the funny part, like the his father, the Paul's child, because he has more awareness, is able to consider more stuff. So he's wiser, essentially. He's wiser and more smart because of it. So he wouldn't do it that way, which means it's like a spectrum. It's a giant spectrum that there's no end to. Because if you zoom in far enough and far enough from the next guy, yeah, you'll see another perspective where that guy will seem like a fool because he was too myopic. He was considering less things than you are, which is crazy. Which means that there, in theory, yeah, there could be some kind of universal mind or something that sees all, sees
I
the
mean,
whole
we
perspective.
we understood this concept that I think a lot of people realize, we can envision this, right? The idea that, look, we can create, I don't know if we can create paradise on earth, but at least we can create something close to it. But the only reason why we're not doing it is because of, we, in some way, we just couldn't agree, right? Like, whether it's human greed or what, just like the saying that,
I
well, we
think
have
we should
enough
just,
money
yeah, I
to
think
solve all of the problems, but
we
it's,
just need to agree on basics, I think, and just really make sure that those basics are respected. Which, like some kind of, I think some kind of minimal something every human should be
yeah.
given. I think
And you see,
that's will be a huge
well, you
help.
see, that's the evolution of, whether it's political science or whatever, and the idea that why say, you know, modern societies evolve more along the line of after the French Revolution, being that a government of people, of the people, right? The idea that is a democratic process of like, okay, we have human rights, right? The idea that that thing is somehow defined at that time, be like, yeah, this is a problem we need to solve. What about human rights, right? What about the right of a man, Because they were trying to figure out this poverty thing, this kind of wealth inequality problem.
Yeah.
And they kind of formalize sort of, okay, well, we have all these philosophies. We've been learning about the enlightenment and all these concepts about philosophy and governance and all this. Well, why don't we execute on
we
that,
want
right?
to use them for
Which
good.
is why they created the Bill of Rights and all that. And then the Americans definitely like, oh yeah, we're going to do, I mean, okay, the French Revolution came after, the American did it, but so the American was the first one. They're like, yeah, we wanted to, but the concept exists, right? The concept was in the mind of the intellectuals, the people. They're trying to figure out, okay, why don't we create a society which is a bit better than this, right? Instead of some few people have all the stuff and then most people can't even get by. So that's the whole idea, because it keep happening. It keep happening where a few people get rich and then eventually the whole system collapses because the most people can't even get by, and then they revolt, and then you change the whole thing again and again and again. That's been what's happening. And it hasn't really changed. The flavor changed, but the recipe is the same, right? We have had the same thing like even till now. We haven't figured this shit out yet. But the idea that a lot of the society kind of figured that, yeah, eventually we kind of had to respect human rights. We had to respect certain rights of individuals
creates
for this whole
suffering,
thing to
right?
work.
It's all in our power to at least reduce suffering. Like, it's physically possible, because there are degrees to suffering, but there's for sure like a very basic, fundamental, visceral level of suffering when you don't have the survival basics at hand.
And also because, people compare themselves. That's just kind of how, I'm not saying that's not really the right way to do it, but a lot of people do. And so when you see one guy, let's say a dictator, saying, I want to control everything, I have the power, like I tell you what to do. You as the other person, you're like, no, why you tell me what to do? Who the hell are you?
Yeah.
Right? Fundamentally, yeah, you can be in power, so I can't say nothing to you, or I can't fight back against you, but I'm going to think whatever I want to think. So I'm going to think, who the hell are you to tell me what to do? Which is the reason why we're talking, we talk about individual agencies and ideas. And you need an environment by which, if everybody can prosper, if you want everybody to prosper, you need to have a space in which we respect each person's individuality to shine. This is how a society can create new stuff, to create exciting things and new
but
technology.
It's still like the crux of it is the like, who owes what to whom, right? Like, what do you owe others and what do they owe to you? That's the biggest part, is that's what these rights are supposed to figure out.
There's nothing perfect system you can create, but at least the idea is that, well, we can negotiate. Have my agency, you have your agency, well, let's negotiate how we're going to deal with this. As opposed to be like, well, I'm the boss.
Yeah,
I'm going to tell you exactly what you do. You can't say nothing back. I don't care who you are. You just have to listen to me. But a lot of the time, this is what happens, right? All these countries are like that. They're like, have one guy or a few people, they say, well, you got to do what I say because I have the power. Then you create the imbalance. Over time, people going to suffer. People going to be unhappy. It's just going to be, that's just kind of almost the physics of it. Like, that's just how it works. That's how human incentive works. It's how, so all this thing, that experimentation in the political realm of all these kind of things like communism, this and that, it didn't work out because what? It's against human nature. It's against incentive. It's against all this stuff. That's why it doesn't work, right? So it's just like we're still trying to figure things out, right? It's like, what's the best way to live? Well, we don't know. There's obviously people are born in different conditions, because this is the thing, right? The ugly truth of it is that there is no equality. Nothing is equal. Nothing. You can even say nothing is fair and nothing is unfair. Okay, it is just what it is. Okay, everybody is born in a different condition, different situation. You just like roll up the dice. Okay, some people are just born in worst case scenario. I mean, what are you gonna do about that? That's just your life, right? Who are you gonna complain to, right? So I'm all for equal opportunity. Okay, this is how society should be, but you can't say that everybody is equal. No, you're not born equal. Nobody is equal. What do you mean equal? Everybody is unique, right? Everybody is born in a unique situation, and they have to just play with that, right?
Yeah.
So,
That's the whole other tangent. But I did want to, before we wrap it up, just because you touched on it and I thought it was a cool idea. I wanted to go back to the idea where you said the parallels with the Warhammer 40K. So I was just kind of trying to draw parallels with AI between the topics we were discussing and that. And here are some of the cool ideas here. The strongest parallel is that the both frameworks that we talked about and Warhammer 40K, they treat mind as something that does not stay sealed inside the skull.
right. The
Eh,
warp, the
yeah. So reality as we experience it is deeply entangled with mind and distinctions, which is what the videos of that guy were talking about. While in Warhammer 40K, the warp and chaos are psychic domains shaped by emotions, beliefs, and souls of sentient beings. So in that world, there's a whole domain allocated for where that stuff kind of like lives and have a mind of its own. Kind of reminds me of this idea of collective subconscious, right? It's same type of concept. And the core parallel is that in both systems, inner life has world level consequences rather than being a private side effect. So, for example, Leo from those videos, he says the mind projects distinctions and then sees them reflected back as reality, while in 40K, lore describes chaos as a realm of psychic and emotional energy that takes shape from mortal thought and feeling. So some of the parallels are there. A close match is the idea that human emotion can become transpersonal structure. Like in 40K, the repeated psychic and emotional currents can gather into patterns with consciousness and purpose, eventually becoming chaos gods. Which I've heard of that idea. I recently saw a video that was actually quite fascinating, of some guy online on YouTube. I think it's a scientist who was describing this very new theory that he and his think tank are working on, which they're like only now are starting to introduce into the world, where they are, I guess, proposing that there are some kind of informational structures in physical reality that they detected, that they have kind of like a mind of their own. And from what I understand, they're physicists that they're saying that. It's a very novel theory, of course. But this is something that they've been working on for years, and they're like starting to bring it up, which reminded me of this. It's kind of like some kind of informational content, which it comes into some kind of pattern that endures. Essentially, that's not something random. It's some kind of something.
right.
It just sounds
Just
insane.
the idea, the frequency of different patterns that emerges, right?
It's
Different
kind of like
level of
there's a concept of egregore that that is essentially kind of points to that. So imagine that the fact that people worship like a god, it kind of creates a whole energy that is labeled worshiping God. Like it has certain power, essentially, what this claims, what the concept of egregore means, which there's some kind of truth to it, because the humans, all the millions of humans who believe in a God, that non-existent God essentially has power over millions of people if you think about it,
right.
because it's affecting and guiding their behavior and thinking process, which which is kind of the prime parallel. All right, the second thing that you were asking is that why did Emperor, like, what was his plan? So I was trying to remember that. I asked the AI to explain that part. Is that the main reason that Emperor hid information about chaos, right, from
Right. Yeah.
humanity. So the
That
main
part. Yeah.
reason is that Emperor seems to have believed that knowledge of chaos is itself dangerous, because attention, belief, worship, fear, and psychic contact can strengthen or open a person to the warp. So mass
Right.
disclosure would create like essentially like a gateway, and it would create corruption that he was trying to prevent. And that makes sense. That totally makes sense, because it's like once
More you know, the
the,
more corruptible you will be.
because that's like an access to direct interaction with this stuff. But all it takes is just this awareness. Oh, that exists? And people curiosity will be like, bring them right into
Which
the
is
demon's
why,
hands.
they feed them like, you must exterminate all Xenos, right? All
Yeah.
these heretics, and like they
Yeah.
just don't think.
None
It's
of
like,
that
just kill
stuff.
them. That's
Yeah.
it. Just kill them. That's it.
Mm,
That's only. Don't even. They're just
yeah.
bad. They need to die. That's it.
Yeah.
Right? Don't even think about, oh, why do they do it? Why don't have empathy? Okay, you can't
At
not
the
have
basic
empathy, because
level,
once you start
is that
thinking about that,
they're,
it's like, oh, but I empathize with these people. No,
yeah.
they're heretics. They're cultists. You need to kill them. And that's it. Right?
Like, I mean, at the fundamental level, this is like Nazism, but on the species level. Really, that's
Right.
what it is. That's all it is. Because you're saying, screw everybody else who are not like us. They need to not exist. That is how radical it is.
Right.
There's only
Well,
us.
there's also, I guess, in that calculus, it was more like, it's also self-preservation for mankind to kind of exist, because they
Yeah,
know
well,
the
that's the
world is
thing.
dangerous, right? The universe is dangerous with all the tyrannies and all these different Xenos trying to, I don't know, dominate the universe as well, right? So like, to
Yeah,
survive well,
it's
we kind of can't allow this
it's
to.
always a battle for domination. It seems like, so if you're not playing it, but others are playing it, then you will not
You're
exist.
forced to play it. You're
Yeah,
forced to
yeah,
play
you're
with that.
forced to play it, because if orcs come, or if Tyranids come, like, that's the game they're playing. So what are you gonna do? Like, you have to, by the sheer fact of their existence, you have to participate. Otherwise, you don't exist. That's the game of existence, it seems, right? So domination seems
Just
to
in
be
the
baked
same
into
way,
that.
just in the same way, in Dune, they limit technologies, right? They're like, no computers, because they know once you get to that level, anything goes, right?
Right.
Because they want to
Becomes
limit the amount of
too
damage
dangerous.
because they're trying to limit, yeah, they essentially put the blinders on, and make people fight the old ways, where
Yeah.
it's controllable. You're not gonna destroy the whole universe,
Yeah.
with technology. You're just like, well, it's
Way too
limited fighting.
dangerous.
It's like a
Way
it's like
too
a
big of a
fist fight,
gun.
just like fist fight. The rule is just with your fist, okay?
Yeah.
Just nothing else, and just do
You
that. So
have
that's
will, you have aggression, and you can use it, but in this like limited, more humane form, which is, it's funny to think about it that way. But it's almost like, well, you can't avoid it, you can't eliminate it. So let's at least limit it. Like,
right.
there's definitely wisdom
That's
in
the
that.
feudalism, right? That's feudalism is to control the elements as much
Mm.
as you can with the structure that you set up, right? Where is the belief system, is everything. You know how in the feudal age, it's just the idea that you are born into whoever you are. Like, say, if you are a serf, will always be a serf. There's no way for you to become a noble, right? There is no mobility. So it's just like you're born into your role. So that way, it's a stagnant stability. Stagnant, it doesn't change. They try to limit the change because they suffer through a cataclysm that is AI, powered by the computer took over, right?
Mm.
Almost killed humanity in that story.
Yeah.
So the idea is that, nope, that's a hard cap. We cannot allow computer to exist ever again.
Yeah. Too big of a risk.
Too big of a risk for it to just go sideways. So everything has to be human. So that's the whole idea. But yeah, isn't that kind of similar to panpsychism? The idea that consciousness is pervasive, I guess. The idea that is
What is similar? The like chaos?
the concept, like behind 40K is the idea there's the warp, there's the mind, there's the almost seems like
Well,
a
the warp,
consciousness
no,
is
there the
part of
warp
the.
is as a like a parallel. plane of existence, it seems like. Whereas idealism is saying that there is only consciousness, so everything
Oh,
consists
okay.
of it.
Everything is conscious.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. There's
So
only
that's
one dimension kind of to it. But
okay.
there it's almost like two separate dimensions, which is like it exists somewhere. It's just like non-physical, but somehow it's like it's superimposed in some kind of liminal
Right.
space or something.
But that does remind me of the concept, the idea that, if we say that consciousness is outside of us, then we are just like receivers. We receive the signal somehow, some way, and that's kind of how we. Because if you think, if it's outside of our body, I just say, meaning that it's part of the fabric of reality, right? In that hypothesis, that means we're operating, at least this is just how I interpret it, is like that must mean that we are just like a radio receiver. We receive the signal. Oh, okay, I see. This is how, otherwise it will be contained within your body, right? That's the physicalist idea, that you're born with consciousness and it doesn't go outside of, but other people argue otherwise, right? With the near death experience and all that. And they believe that, yeah, it's something
well, yeah,
more
yeah.
than your body.
When you're alive, your consciousness is kind of contained to your body, right? It's always
Yeah, which is the
in
question
terms of
of
your perception.
how is it? If it's a part of the fabric of reality, then what does that mean
Well, no,
for,
there's too little information to think about this. Like it could be
yeah,
anything. Like
it
there's
is.
no, you can
So it
assume it
is
one way or
still
another.
it is still a belief, like we go full
Yeah,
circle,
like
right? The
any of these
idea,
could be reality. You wouldn't know right now.
yeah. So that's my first conception when you explain this, his position. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's just your opinion, man. Like, I mean, isn't
Yeah,
that
that's the thing. That's what I'm trying to make it like practical. What is the practical application of this knowledge? If it has
right?
no bearing on my everyday reality, then it's I don't need it. It's useless, and it doesn't change anything. It
Yeah.
doesn't make it
Well,
doesn't
it's
make any sense if you say this
yeah,
10 times that the reality is a dream, nothing changes.
yeah. I mean, at least, humans try to find ways to utilize the knowledge that they have, right? It's it's just part of our experiential reality. Like, we want to use information that we have. Just like, once we found out there are different elements in the world, the periodic table, we try to find ways to use it. And that's kind of how it is. Like, all the elements you can use, you can find some use for it in the process of, whatever we create with it. Yeah, humans are naturally curious about, oh, can we use this? In the same way, the joke is, when it comes to Chinese, like, can we eat it? Like, that's the first question we ask. Like, anything else, can we eat it? It's a joke, but it's like, yeah, where's the priority? For the human priority is to, like, oh, can you use it? Can you, is there value, right? Because that's the first level of evaluation. It's like, is
Yeah,
this
it's like what
valuable to
what can
me?
you do with it? That's almost like a part of natural curiosity. And I think this is why like this is one of those main reasons why Emperor from 40K was trying to curb that information. And again, these like just different takes, different theories on it, because there were a couple. Like one of them was just to prevent even, the whole prospect of anybody interacting with it, because people would become curious, fascinated with it.
Right?
They'd
You
be
get
just like, "Oh, what
corrupted
is
by it.
this?"
Yeah.
They like, or they would be too prideful to draw in to be drawn in essentially.
Or they're just thinking, oh, I can use it. I can
Exactly. Or they
utilize the
would think like,
power,
"Oh,
and
how can I use this for? Like, do these guys offer some powers or gifts or something? Let's sell my soul and get some riches and stuff like that." A couple other theories, like another theory was that the imperial truth denied gods and superstition because religion, devotion, and metaphysical obsession were seen as fuel for the ruinous powers. So publicly admitting that the powers are there would be undermining the secular program holding the Great Crusade
but
together.
then
So it was like an
but then
ideological reason.
he's worshipped as a god, right? Basically.
Well, because he's like the closest thing, real thing to being one. Um, there also was a long-term strategic goal to withhold that information because uh, to replace the warp travel dependence through the human human webway project. So essentially, in that emperor knew that this thing exists, but it was so dangerous and so precarious to reveal it that because people would engage with it full on, that essentially he took it upon himself to hide the truth while he was developing, I guess, means and building up the empire to like completely move out of reach of harm of chaos, because they had space travel that kind of dealt with the warp. It was their only way of navigating the stars. And it looks like there was another project that humanity tried to invent technology which would circumvent using the warp altogether for the travel. So there were different logic to it, which all sounds like makes sense, right? But in the end, as we know, the tragic irony is that secrecy helped create the whole disaster it was meant to prevent.
Yeah.
Because many Primarchs and Astartes, they just didn't know what it was. Like, but when they encountered chaos, they don't know. They didn't know what they were dealing with. So they were they were more vulnerable to manipulation, the half truths, the wounded pride, the forbidden curiosity that, like, when they encountered chaos. So it's interesting. So almost like, again, like a paradox is that you wanted the best, what was the best, and you inevitably you became part of the engine that manufactured the whole tragedy.
Yeah, see, that's the whole, I think that's also, this part of it is also, I think, a play on, because, 40K is a amalgam of all kinds of influences and stuff, I think part of it reminded me, in this case, of Pandora's box, the myth, the Greek myth that, once you open that box, all the evil of the world escapes, but what's left is also hope, right? So the idea that the salvation might actually be part of it as well. So by holding it, yeah, you create all that curiosity, and somebody's gonna open that Pandora's box because they just want to know, right? So it's almost like, well, there's nothing you can do about it. Almost, you just have to be prepared because somebody's gonna open the box. Just like the AI thing right now, right? They're trying to open that box,
and people like, ooh,
because
yeah,
we can do all these things and stuff.
Because
but then
everybody's so curious.
But curiosity kills the cat, right? So that's also what we're dealing with. So
it doesn't seem like we have a choice. Like, if we
you just have to play by ear, man. Because humanity is
counter a thing, we seem to be like messing with it. We seem to be like
that's
checking to the full extent what we can do with it.
But you see, why is it that humans, let's just say, in the world of 40K, what's corruptible? Something that have a mind. I don't think you can corrupt Tyranids, right? They just do their thing.
Right.
What about orcs? They're so dumb. They're so non-thinking. They're like,
yeah, hold on. I don't remember any corrupted orcs or are the species. No,
you can't. You cannot corrupt them, right?
But I think is it only humans? Hold on. Yeah, I will need to research.
Isn't it true that the orcs can travel through the warp without any problem? They just like,
I don't remember any stories of the orcs being affected by it.
It just works, man. Red go fast, it go fast. And I think red is fast, it is fast.
There's some fuzzy rules there for sure, but because
I think in general, right, the idea that if you have a thinking mind, you're gonna be much more susceptible to be corrupted, right? Like Eldars can be, humans can be.
Yes.
The Tau, right?
Yeah.
They can be as well.
I think so. Yeah. It's any cognizing intelligent life form. Yeah.
Right. So that means I don't know, right? That's just at least that's in the lore, in the story, it seems to be that's the case. So it means you can infer that it means that if you're higher intelligence, that's the part of thinking.
It's almost like a shadow, right? It's like the shadow aspect of it. It's like
the more you recognize
in that metaphorical chaos realm, it's like something that's repressed, that's being repressed and pushed out in its own little, but it doesn't disappear.
Yeah, like we know,
Because energy can't be destroyed.
Yeah, we hear this all the time, right? Intelligent people suffer a lot more because they constantly thinking about things. They constantly worry about all this stuff because they can recognize it. Because if you're not smart enough, you're not gonna recognize it. You don't worry about it, right?
Yeah.
Ignorance is bliss in a way because you're not thinking about it, you're not worrying about it. But when you are able to correlate all this information, the more information you have, the more you see, and the more you suffer, the more you're gonna have to think about, oh, well, what about all this? How does that work?
Yeah.
How does it come together, right? So, I mean, life is kind of a balance between neurosis and just what's the other end of it? It's like what, peace and quiet. I don't know. It's just we just vacillate between, okay, worry about life and then don't want to worry about it.
Yeah, neurosis and lethargy, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it would be nice if we don't have to worry about nothing, but sometimes.
But would it be though?
But exactly, right? Because evolution taught us that you actually do need challenges and adversity to grow.
Yeah, there's
how
such
you grow
a thing
muscles.
as a healthy stress.
Yeah, you do need stress. You can't just be like, oh, nothing to worry about. Well, no, that's not good. So you always be on your toes.
Thing to think about, because
so it's like you can never be at peace almost. But you gotta play. I don't know. Part of you should recognize that you need challenges. You need
always striving towards balance.
You need some stress. But the other part is like, yeah, you don't want to be overstressed. So it's like that balance. Where do you find it?
Yes, and on this healthy note, we got to wrap it up because
it
keep going.
Indeed,
we keep going.
It's been again our typical
all over the place.
Yeah, as always. And been this long, man. I don't know. There's so much to talk about. It's too much.
Yeah,
man.
It keeps varying all these really different tangents, which it's really difficult to contain the discussion to the topic at hand. So we may just not be able to comprehend this stuff.
I don't think that's
because
you can't do it, and it's also
different.
The point of it is to explore it too. Right?
Yeah, so it's just part of that. It's just exploration for fun. See where
because it's just trying to understand what this thinking is all about.
Yeah,
which means you gotta expand it into okay. Well, does that mean this, that, and
what does it actually mean? Because they're very condensed ideas and topics. So that was just one video that we're able to review. There's 2 more, so let's try to do it like an episode per video because there's just more, of course, right? This is just introducing the whole thing to it. So
yeah,
but it's fun.
I feel like
it's a good prompt.
It is a good prompt, yeah, but it constantly goes back to kind of that's a version of describing things, and I don't know. You can delve into all kinds of details, but
this is what I want to kind of to draw that line to see, like, does it have any practical applications to life? Because if there's something
I think it does.
Yeah, I think it does. I want to distill that, and I think that would be good enough.
Yeah, I think that's the useful part of it, is that you can distill any of this into useful stuff. But you just don't want to be like, oh, I believe this wholeheartedly. This is the reality.
Don't believe nothing without
I think you always want to have
a
good dose of.
That's still my thinking.
Skepticism.
Yeah.
That will just be healthy, right? This will be good for you,
sure.
And not to get drawn into something that's
always
how many people
retain it.
How many people fall into not just scam, but like just cults?
Yeah,
right? Because you got convinced. Like,
I actually just wrote an article just about this topic because it was also on the forefront of our thinking in the previous episode, I think. And we're talking about scamming in general and what to believe in and not. But I actually wrote an article based on some research because I looked up for some research on the topic, and it turned out like to be quite interesting. I'll send it to you to check it out because it's essentially about the fact that there is such a thing as cults, as organized religion, and the stuff done there on purpose to quite literally manipulate the masses. It's an actual mechanism in human world. It's crazy, dude, and you don't think about it when you're not aware of it. So when you're roped in, I mean, this is what happens, like where they're called survivors. Their awareness of this stuff is beyond because they actually lived through it. They lived it in first person view through being manipulated and being like, it's almost like an experiment type of thing where you were being forced and presented a version of reality for the sole purpose of manipulating you to someone else's benefits. It's crazy.
Yep. That's what happens all the
That's
time,
the
man.
scariest stuff.
Which is why, dude, the world is a complex place, and sometimes it's scary, man. All these things trying to get you, man.
Yeah. So, for more scary bullshit, tune in for the next episode. It's enough for today for this one, because I won't be able to sleep tonight at this point.
Stay fried, man.
Stay fried and stay crispy. Yeah. See you in the next one.